Hello, my friend. Today, we will step into the eerie calm that precedes one of history's greatest eruptions. You wake before dawn, on Crete, breathing in air so still it feels as if the world itself is holding its breath. The birds fall silent, and a faint taste of ash lingers on your tongue. You wouldn't last long in this dusty dawn. Your lungs would burn, your feet would tremble, and each choice could mean the difference between life and oblivion. As you hear the distant growl of Thera's slumbering giant, you can almost feel heat pulsing beneath your sandals. Will you gather your family and flee to higher ground, or risk the overloaded boats waiting at the harbor? Before you drift deeper into this world of whispered omens and swirling ash, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these soft echoes of a distant past. Share your thoughts in the comments. How would you react when the sky darkens and everything you know turns to dust? Now settle into your cozy nest, let the night wrap around you, and let your eyes grow heavy, but keep your senses alert. And now, turn off the lights, lower the air conditioner, pull up your blanket, and let's begin our journey tonight. Let's go. Sense the whispering silence. You wake just before dawn, slumbering beneath the faint glow of oil lamps. As you crack open your eyes, an uncanny stillness envelops your home. Outside, the air feels heavier than usual, almost as though it holds its breath, reluctant to stir. You pause, tuning your ears for the familiar chorus of mourning the bleeding goats, the cawing rooks, the gentle clatter of clay pots as your mother begins the day's chores. But today, nothing stirs. An emptiness of sound blankets the village. Gripping the edge of your woven mat, you swing your legs over the side and stand barefoot upon the cool, smooth stone floor. Your feet press into the chill of the dawn hour. You notice how even the breeze is hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the hush. Beyond your painless window, the first pale light of Helios spreads across the olive groves in gentle slants, but the sky lacks its usual reddish-pink glow. Instead, faint streaks of gray linger against the pale horizon. You inhale deeply, filling your lungs with the air scented by olive oil and damp earth. Yet it smells faintly of ash, an acrid tang like burned wood, though no fire burns close. You blink twice, unsure if your senses deceive you. Outside, the shadow of a distant hill seems sharper than the day before, as if the world itself has fallen still in anticipation. Slipping into your sandals, you wrap your linen tunic around your shoulders to guard against the morning chill, and step outside. The courtyard is dim. The walls of your home cast long, muted silhouettes across the ground. The only movement is the low sway of an ancient olive tree near the stone cistern, its gnarled trunk seemingly trembling under an unseen burden. Your heart lurches. An echo of a trader's tale from years ago drifts through your mind. Sometimes the sea whispers of a storm to come, and the sky grows silent before the tempest. With careful steps, you approach the villagers who have already gathered near the well. Their faces are etched with confusion, eyes scanning the sky. Some clutch small bundles of cloth. Others hold their livestock quietly, as though the animals themselves sense danger. The usual chatter about yesterday's catch or the price of grain is replaced by a low hum of worry. You clear your throat, trying to sound steady, though your own pulse quickens. Have you noticed? You call softly to Maros the shepherd. He nods with a grim expression, eyes fixed upon the horizon to the north. I haven't heard a single crow since I rose, he whispers, voice hushed. Even the goats stand unnerved. You glance toward the olive thicket to the west. A pair of goats remain motionless, heads bowed as if in prayer. Their usual bleating would have echoed through these groves by now, but their silence makes your skin prickle. Beyond them, closer to the shore, a flock of shorebirds that normally forage at daybreak circle overhead in silent arcs. You recall hearing that birds can sense tremors, tiny quivers in the earth, before humans can feel them. A shiver of dread crawls up your spine. Yet you push the worry aside momentarily, focusing on tangible tasks. You approach the well's edge and lower the heavy clay jar into the cool water. As you draw it up, a sudden tremor ripples under your feet, so subtle you nearly miss it, but the goats stampede in panic, knocking into one another. The jar slips, and you catch it before it crashes to the stones. Earthquake, you mutter under your breath. Your muscles tighten. You know only too well how the earth can groan and give way without warning. In the dim light, you notice the men securing ropes around goats and donkeys. A few women hurriedly bundle olives and figs into baskets, placing them atop their shoulders. Even the priestess Moira, normally calm and solemn looks disturbed her eyes, tracing the skyline as though trying to read a portent in the early light. "We should pray," she murmurs, eyes distant. She raises her arms in a gentle arc, whispering a chant to Demeter, goddess of the earth's bounty. Her words float on the wind, an appeal to spare the land and its people. You step back a pace, heart thudding. Inhale, exhale. Despite the tension, you push forward. You'll need to decide soon whether to stay near the shore, where boats may carry you to safety, or move inland toward higher ground. Both choices feel perilous. The moment you step into the dawn's half-light, you feel the ground shift again, this time more pronounced. Pebbles ricochet down the slope behind you. A low rumble drifts from across the sea, distant, yet deep enough to rattle your bones. Your thoughts race. If the mountain on Thera has awakened any number of disasters, could be unfolding unseen, ashfall tsunamis, toxic gases. The faint amber glow above the horizon hints at more than just sunrise. It might be the glow of embers, or molten rock. You know that time is pressing. Rumors have long circulated among fishermen that the sea around Thera sometimes turns crimson moments before violent eruptions. The stories seemed fantastical until today. Despite your fear, you steel your resolve. You gather your scant belongings, a small pouch of dried figs, and dates passed down from your mother, a waterskin that still smells faintly of olive, and a leather satchel containing a thin piece of papyrus with hastily drawn maps to a higher plateau several miles inland. Your father's voice echoes in your mind. When the winds carry ash and the earth shudders beneath your feet, do not linger. Head for solid ground where the sea's fury cannot reach. Clutching your supplies, you stand at the threshold of your doorway, staring at the hazy silhouette of the sea beyond. Even now you cannot see any boats, only the vast expanse of dark water. The sun's first rays struggle to penetrate the ash-laced air, casting the world in a ghostly gray gold. You lift your chin and steel your eyes against the glare, imagining the mountain's crest hidden beyond the horizon, its summit roaring with molten intensity. In this moment of uncanny calm, broken only by the low moans of frightened livestock and the distant rumble, you understand that your decision will shape whether you live or perish. You glance back at your fellow villagers. Some clutch their children, others herd goats toward the winding road, and a handful remain frozen, unsure what to do. Your own heart pounds with the realization that you must move, must choose. With quiet determination, you turn your gaze toward the narrow path leading uphill. The trail winds through olive trees, whose leaves already tremble with a premonition of ash and dust. You press your fingers against the worn leather of your satchel. The tiny seeds of fear and adrenaline swirl in your belly, but beneath them, a steely thread of resolve takes hold. You vow under your breath that you will not stay here to become desolation's witness. You will seek higher ground and cling to life, come what may. Slowly you step forward, each footfall deliberate and steady. Behind you, the village remains poised in that hush, a fragile moment before chaos descends. But you are determined to break through the silence and act. As you ascend the slope, the rumble grows louder, and the wind carries a fine, gritty dust towards you. Still you press on, shoulders squared against the unknown. In this whispering silence, you sense the world shifting beneath your feet, and you know there is no returning to the quiet you once knew. The eruption of Thera is coming, and you have chosen to move toward the uncertain dawn. Spot the ash cloud on the horizon. You push through the low, thick hedge of olive saplings, each leaf dusted with the faintest whisper of gray. The sun has risen a touch higher, its pale arms reaching across the sky, but the light feels muted, hazy as though draped in gauze. Every inhale carries a bitter tang, and the thin veil of ash clings to your lips, tickling your nostrils. You pause on a gentle spur of rock that juts from the hillside, heart pounding, and scan the horizon as dawn's mist lifts. There, beyond the undulating blue of the Aegean, a column of smoke unfurls like a monstrous torch. It rises black as obsidian, drifting skyward in a spiraling dance. The plume blots out patches of the rising sun, turning the heavens a ghostly charcoal. You squint, shielding your eyes with one hand as grains of ash cascade around you like cold metallic rain. The sight is both hypnotic and horrifying, an unwelcome herald of things to come. For a moment, you wonder if the traitor's tales were true, after all, that Thera's heart could stir with a fury unlike any other. Your mind races back to the stories passed down by your grandfather, passed in hushed tones around evening fires, legends of roaring thunder from deep within the earth, rivers of molten rock carving paths through the island, and waves rising taller than temple columns. Those words once felt like myth. Now you witness their echo in the sky. Your fingertips brush the coarse-grained stone of a marker carved by travelers long ago. The glyphs depict a small vessel, braving rolling waves, an image that's both cautionary and hopeful. You cling to that hope. If the boats can survive, so can you. If only you reach the harbor in time. But as you glance down the hillside toward your village, you see villagers stirring like startled birds. Some are already moving along the dusty road toward the harbor. Others scramble to unloose fish nets that crisscross in tangled webs. A gust of wind carries a fresh plume of ash, and you catch your breath. The ground rumbles beneath your feet, a low, reverberating growl that rattles the stones. Your pulse spikes. At this distance, the tremor feels like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant growing ever more restless. You know better than to linger at sea level. A tsunami could surge across the bay within minutes of the eruption. Your eyes flick toward the winding trail that curves eastward. Along the ridge, higher ground, lies there a safe haven above the water's reach. Still, you feel the pull of the harbor's lights, bright and beckoning. Boats with curved prows rest quietly against river stones, their decks tied with thick ropes, conical sails furled. You imagine slipping into one and rowing frantically southward, away from the smoke. But the ash cloud's shadow darkens the cove. The wind might carry it ashore, in choking gusts. Each choice feels fraught with peril. Stay low and risk the wave, or climb higher and risk succumbing to ash inhalation and isolation. In the brush to your right, a restless donkey stirs its eyes, wide tail flicking. Nearby, a goat nudges at the coarse cliff grass, as though grazing on the hillside's final green. The two animals seem uneasy, as if aware of the coming catastrophe. You crouch beside the donkey's muzzle, your hand brushing its dusty mane. "We have to go," you whisper voice, barely audible over the wind's soft moan. You pat its flank, trying to convey steadiness. For a fleeting moment, its large brown eye meets yours, and you feel a bond you must protect one another. You stand and carefully descend the rocky spur, each footfall deliberate and light. Ash patters against your shoulders. You swipe it away with the back of your hand. Each breath burns your throat, but you force yourself to inhale, slowly focusing on the rationed water within your waterskin. Thieves of hope. You remind yourself, do not let despair breed in this moment. Keep moving. Halfway down, you notice a small cluster of villagers gathered near an overturned fishing boat. They're struggling to free a child tangled in the net. The girl's eyes are wide with terror as coarse ropes tug at her ankles. Without hesitating, you sprint across loose stones, your feet slipping until you find purchase on a flat slab. With a swift motion, you sever the net's binding with a hastily sharpened flint blade, cold steel in the pressure of panic. The girl scrambles free, just as another tremor ripples through the ground. She gasps, stumbling into your arms, her small body trembling. "Mama," she chokes. Her mother rushes over, tears streaming. You steady the girl's shoulders, offering a reassurance you scarcely feel. "It will be all right. We must go now." You look toward the harbor. The boats now rock gently, as though eager to be unleashed. But beyond them, the ash cloud has grown, expanding like a monstrous beast across the sky. You extend a hand toward the girl, and she grips it, her fingers clenched into yours. Net cloaked you, guide them both toward the path climbing eastward. Every step claws at your resolve, each breath an aching reminder of the ash. The sun's rays struggle to penetrate the haze. A sickly yellow glow suffuses the world. You catch sight of the fishermen. Many are untying their boats, but the oars remain motionless, as if the men cannot decide whether to paddle out or seek refuge on the shore. You step past them, pulling the child toward the steeper switchbacks. Up here, ash falls like snow, coating your tunic and clogging your hair. Every inhale stings your lungs, but you press on determined. As you ascend, you glimpse distant plumes rising from multiple vents along Thera's shoulders, each spurt of smoke like an angry breath from the mountain. The ground's tremors intensify. Loose stones careen downhill with a rattling fury. You lean into the slope, feet angled to brace against the slide. You spare a glance behind you. The mothers clutch infants, urging them upward. The goats bleat scrambling on uneven ground, donkeys bray hooves skidding. The hillside is alive with panicked movement, but you focus on a single thought: reach the high ridge before the wave, and ash descend. An echoing roar crescendos from across the water, an ominous reminder that nature's fury now finds its voice. You feel the ground shake in a rapid series of quakes, each tremor more violent than the last. The girl in your charge tightens her grip, pressing herself against you. You whisper, "Stay close. Don't look back." Her tear-streaked face is smudged with ash, and her breath hitches. You feel a rush of gentleness for this small life that now depends on you. Finally, you crest the third switchback, stepping onto a rocky shoulder that overlooks the entire bay. Below, the sea churns colors, shifting from deep blue to eerie green, as if the water senses the turmoil beneath. The fishing boats bob wildly as waves crest, but they remain below the shoreline. You scan the horizon. The smoke darkens into a suffocating shroud, blotting out what little sky you could see. Already ash rides the wind, drifting inland like a carpet of doom. You guide the girl down onto a flatter ledge, where a rough circle of stones suggests a long, unused shrine. The air here is thinner and the ash less dense, but still each pull of breath tastes like embers. You lower the child gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. She looks at you with tearful gratitude. In that moment, the mountain bellows again, an eruption of stone and fire, and you see glimmers of orange-red within the cloud. A river of lava must now course down the mountain slopes. Yet on this ridge, you stand shielded from the worst of the sea's wrath. The waves' roar crashes far below against submerged shores, and a rolling surge reminds you of the fragility of your escape. You look at the villagers now huddled nearby, old fishermen, mothers and children alike. Some clutch jugs of water, others press ragged cloth to their mouths. Their expressions mirror your own, a wild mix of relief, fear, and determination. You take a slow, deliberate breath, pushing any rising panic away. Here on this high ground, the ash will inevitably fall thicker, but at least you may breathe longer. You glance at the child again. Her small form shivers, and you wrap a coarse wool blanket around her shoulders, offering what warmth remains. "You are safe now," you whisper. In your own mind, you repeat the vow you will not abandon hope. As the ash begins to drift in heavier swirls, dimming the world into a muted sepia, you prepare for the long hours ahead. The mountain's voice still echoes in your ears, an echo you cannot unhear. Beside you, the girl tightens her grip on the blanket, and you realize that survival is not just about outlasting the eruption. It's about guiding others through the uncharted silence that follows. So you turn your gaze back toward the mountains and the sea, and the swirling ash, each a reminder of nature's raw, unbridled power. You breathe, determined to face the unknown. For on this ridge, you and your small band now stand between life and oblivion. And you will see this trial through until dawn's light breaks free of the ash-choked sky. Gather essential supplies quickly. You rise from the ridge's rocky shoulder, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Ash still drifts around you like slow flakes of winter snow. Below, the sea's roar fades into a low, constant pulse. For a moment, You simply stand, breathing shallow, feeling the grit scrape at your lungs before a surge of purpose propels you forward. You must gather supplies now while you still can. Your mind flickers to your home, a simple, clay-walled dwelling near the olive grove, now likely buried under a thick layer of ash. You cannot return there. The path is already hazardous, and the ash may conceal hidden pits or unstable ground. Yet you need the provisions stored in your small larder, jars of dried figs, barley loaves, and most crucially, fresh water. Without water, you will not last through the long hours of ashfall ahead. You lock your focus on a few basic items: water, food, a makeshift mask, and a tool to defend yourself or clear debris. Everything else can wait. You spot your neighbor, Callias, approaching, his face streaked with ash, eyes wide with fear. He carries a burlap sack over his shoulder, and in one hand he clutches a leather waterskin, the strap worn smooth by years of use. You call out in a hushed tone, "Callias, help me collect water. Let's move quickly before the ash thickens." He nods, and together you pick your way down the hillside toward the village's communal cistern. Footfalls on the loose volcanic pebbles send small avalanches of debris tumbling. You steady each other as you descend, every step deliberate, one foot in front of the other heel, touching rock before you shift your weight. The ridge's thin soil gives way occasionally, and you brace yourself with a crooked olive branch, its bark rough and comforting in your palms. As you near the cistern, a round stone well dug centuries ago, you see that a thin film of ash has already begun to cover the rim. Carefully, you wipe the top surface with the edge of your tunic, ensuring you won't contaminate the water. Then, lowering a wooden bucket tied to a fraying rope, you listen for the gurgle of water deep below. The rope rattles as you lower the bucket into the dark depths. Each second stretches long, and you feel your pulse in your fingertips, clenching the rope. At last, the bucket tilts, releasing a hollow, clunk water. You tighten your grip and begin to pull. The jar emerges, dripping water mixed with fine gray soot. With steady hands, you tilt the bucket until the water sloshes into 2 empty jars you brought from home. Next, you move to gather food. In your free hand, you hold one of the jars, heavy but precious. The village larder stands beneath a thatched roof, but you approach with caution. The structure's supports may have weakened in the tremors. You and Callias flinch as the building lets out a mournful creak, as if protesting the weight of its bounty. Inside, sacks of barley and jars of olive oil rest on low wooden shelves. You tear open a sack of barley with your bare hands, letting a handful of dry grains fall into your palm. The golden kernels glint in the dim, ash-filtered light. You scoop a generous portion into a small cloth sack, knotting the top securely. Then you reach for a jar of olive oil, feeling the familiar cool weight in your palm. It will serve as both food and a source of light, should you need to kindle a flickering flame in the darkness to come. Callias glances nervously at the doorway. The ash is falling faster. He whispers, voice hoarse. "We should move." You nod, grasping the sack of barley and the jar of oil. You each sling one of the heavy jars of water over a shoulder, the straps gnawing into your skin, but serving as a constant reminder of what truly matters. On any other morning, you might have taken the cool leather of the waterskin for granted, but today it feels like a lifeline. A quick thought brings you back to your home. What other items might still be there? A length of linen cloth that you once used to bind wounds. A simple flint blade your father fashioned for carving wood. You ask Callias, "We need a mask to filter the ash. Do you still have that piece of linen from your granary?" He nods, digging into his sack and retrieving a length of coarse linen. The fabric is rough and gray, but you breathe easier knowing you can tie it around your face to protect your lungs. Together, you tear the linen into strips wide enough to cover your nose and mouth, long enough to knot behind your head. Callias ties his strip first, wrapping it snugly. You knot yours, firmly adjusting the cloth so it clings to your cheeks. Instantly, the acrid sting in your throat lessens, though the ash still seeps into every crevice. By now, the ash is arriving in denser waves, tiny gray motes shimmering in the fading sunlight. You clutch your jars even tighter, conscious of how each step may send fine ash cascading down onto your supplies. You pull your hood low over your forehead, pressing the cloth tightly around your face. Callias does the same. You move toward a nearby stable where the villagers had stored tools, flint blades, wooden staffs, and a handful of flint-tipped spears. The wooden beams sag under the weight of ash settled on the roof, each creak threatening to collapse the structure. Carefully, you step inside, avoiding piles of fallen debris. With a swift hand, you grab a sturdy wooden staff, the shaft carved from a cedar sapling. Its weight in your hand feels reassuring. If you encounter fallen rocks or need to knock loose a trap door, this staff will suffice. Your fingers brush against a ceramic jar tucked behind a broken crate kindling. You recall that the nights will be cold once the ash blocks the sun's warmth. You add the jar to your load, giving it a careful tap to check for fragility. The inside crackles with dry tinder. One spark could yield enough warmth to soothe quivering bodies in the hours to come. The ash begins to fall in large clumps, like wet snowflakes, thudding heavily on the stable roof. You and Callias share a glance. You both know it's time to go. You step out into the gray swirl cloak drawn tight around your shoulders, hood shadowing your eyes. With 4 jars of water slung across your shoulders, a sack of barley at your waist, a jar of olive oil in one hand, and the staff in the other. You and Callias start back toward the ridge. The path is treacherous now, slippery with ash, and obscured by drifts that gather at each step. Your boots, simple leather sandals, offer little protection, yet you press on, mindful that the ridge remains the safest vantage point for now. You hear groans of splintering wood behind you as the stable collapses, sending a plume of ash into the air. It feels as though Thera itself has exhaled. On the ascent, you glimpse a small group huddled near the grove, a mixture of women, children, and elders. They look up as you approach, desperation flickering in their eyes. One of the mothers signals, her face smeared with ash. She holds out a clay cup, empty. In that moment, you recognize that your supplies mean more than survival. For just yourself, they represent hope for others. You press one of your jars of water into her hands, nodding solemnly. She bows her head, tears mingling with ash on her cheeks. You cannot help them all, but you will help this family. As you move on, Callias offers the mother your jar of water, then clamps a strong hand on your arm. There's no time, he urges. Reluctantly, you turn away, forging ahead. Each step up the hillside is agony, the pull of exhaustion, the weight of provisions, the sting of ash in every breath. But you keep your pace, steady, determined. When you finally reach the shoulder of the ridge, you set your jars down and kneel to rest. The ash quiets a lull between waves. You unscrew one jar, tipping it slightly so you can sip. The cold water soothes your parched throat, and you feel a moment of relief course through your limbs. You pour a small measure into Callias's mouth, and he nods, gratitude softening his furrowed brow. Then come the barley and olive oil. You tear off a small handful of barley kernels, chewing them thoughtfully. Their nutty flavor is a reminder of ordinary mornings before catastrophe. Next, you uncork the olive oil jar, dipping a fingertip and pressing it between your lips. The taste is rich, slightly bitter, but it fortifies you against the uncertainty ahead. You look ahead at the ridge's crest, where the wind sweeps ash away, offering a fragile respite. With determination, you hoist the remaining jars onto a flat boulder and secure the sack of barley beneath your arm. You grasp the staff, feeling its familiar grain beneath your fingertips. Your lungs burn with each breath, but you force a steady inhale, guided by the linen mask's thin barrier. In this suspended moment, ash swirling like restless spirits, the ridge offering scant sanctuary, you understand that your haul of supplies is not just a collection of objects. It is the fragment of normalcy. You can cling to the water to quench your thirst, the barley to quell hunger, the olive oil to kindle a glow in the encroaching darkness, the staff to steady you in uncertain terrain, and the linen mask to shield your lungs. It is hope in its simplest form. You rise, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on your shoulders. Turning to Callias, whose face is streaked with soot and resolve, you whisper, "We must share these with as many as we can. There are others still below. If we stay here alone, it won't matter." He nods, understanding that the only path forward is one of solidarity. Together, you march toward the crest feet, crunching on the ash-laden ground, ready to distribute the precious supplies and face whatever comes next. Heed the animal omens. You step beyond the ridge's crest where ash drifts like whispers from the mountain's heart. Your breath is steady, but labored, a thin ribbon of air passing through the linen bound to your face. Each footfall hisses against the ash-dusted ground, and your staff's tip taps a solemn rhythm. With Callias by your side, you move toward a small copse of cypress and olive trees, hoping to find a moment's reprieve from the relentless gray. But no place here is truly safe, only less perilous. As you weave among the slender trunks, your senses strain to detect life beyond your own pounding heartbeat. At first, it seems the world has grown still, no rustle of leaves or chirp of a cricket. Then in the hush you hear a faint, soft bleat. You pause, tilting your head to pinpoint the sound. There, nestled among low-hanging branches, a young goat stands motionless, its wide eyes reflecting the ashen light. You whisper, "Stay with me," bending to rub its rough wool as gently as you can. It shivers but does not flee. In that instant, you recall an old saying, "Animals sense what humans cannot." Their instincts are tuned to tremors too slight for your feet to feel, and to shifts in the air too subtle for your lungs to register. If the goat remains calm, perhaps the ground ahead is stable momentarily. But you know that silence can deceive. Even so, you follow the goat's gaze toward a narrow path sloping gently northward. Your heart hums with equal parts, hope and dread. You place a hand on the goat's flank, feeling the rise and fall of its breath. Slowly, it begins to move, stepping down the path with deliberate grace. You exchange a quick look with Callias. Without a word, you both understand you will follow this creature and trust its instincts until reason demands otherwise. As you descend, you scan the landscape for other signs. A few feet ahead, a donkey stands tethered to a broken fence post. Its head droops low, ears limp. Normally, donkeys bray at the slightest disturbance, but today it remains silent, as though exhausted by the ash and tremors. You crouch beside it, your fingers brushing its coarse mane. It flinches at your touch, but does not balk. Something in you aches at its vulnerability, yet you draw encouragement from its unexpected stillness. If an animal so burdened by fear can find equanimity, perhaps you can too. Your steps shift to a cautious tiptoe, mimicking the goat's deliberate pace. Each step dislodges a small cloud of ash from the goat's hooves, which glints in the muted light like a dusting of silver. Below, the olive trees that once thrived on sunlit slopes now sag under the weight of ash, their leaves blackened and brittle. You imagine the tremors coursing through their roots as they fought to remain standing. The goat pauses, head lowered, inspecting a patch of grass still green, an island of life in a sea of gray. You breathe out, realizing how precious even a single blade of grass can seem now. Ahead, a pair of doves hitch onto the broken limb of a cypress. They preen their wings, almost impervious to the swirling ash that coats their feathers. You remember that doves feed on delicate grains, tiny seeds that slip between your fingers. If these birds can find nourishment here, perhaps the ashfall hasn't entirely smothered every vital resource. Their quiet presence seems to bless the ground beneath them, as though they carry a hidden promise that life endures, even in devastation. You tilt your chin upward and release a breath, feeling a shiver of reluctant optimism. The path slopes downward into a shallow ravine. The goat nimbly leads you across a fallen trunk that bridges the small gully. On the other side, the air grows cooler and smells faintly of wet stone. You notice ants scurrying in lines along the gnarled bark of a charred bush, tiny black warriors refusing to abandon their colony even as ash dims the sun. You kneel and hold a handful of ash beneath your palm, watching the silica-like powder slip through your fingers like time itself. In that moment, you recall that although the world seems poised at an abyss, strands of life cling to memory and instinct alike. You stand and resume your trek, following the goat until it leads you to a cluster of low terraces built by farmers long ago. Stone walls carve shallow steps into the hillside, each inset once brimming with olives, figs, and pomegranates. Now the terraces lie blanketed in ash, their fruits either smothered or already long gone. Yet, perched atop one of these terraces is a single gray cat, its fur matted whiskers tinged with soot. Its eyes meet yours, unblinking, as though gauging whether you are friend or threat. The goat nuzzles the cat's side, and the cat responds with a soft trill. You wonder if they are companions, bound by a shared understanding of peril. You bow low to greet the cat, being careful not to startle it. It brushes against your shins, its purr reverberating like a distant echo of calm, an almost imperceptible hum that seeps into your thoughts. You crouch, letting your staff rest across your knees, and reach out to stroke its head. The cat closes its eyes in trust. In this brief stillness, you absorb a lesson. Even amid ash and rubble, community persists. Animals that once belonged to separate worlds now find solace in each other's company. You recall that many Cretan farmers kept cats to protect grain stores from rodents and goats to provide milk and leather. Their instincts honed over centuries sense threats and refuge in equal measure. Perhaps you think if you heed their silent counsel, you might find the hidden pockets of safety scattered across these mountainside terraces. A distant tremor jolts the ground, and the cat bolts into a nearby thicket. The goat follows with surprising agility, weaving through charred underbrush until both creatures vanish from your sight. You rise, senses alight with renewed purpose. Callias meets your gaze and nods, understanding that the animals have chosen a path for you to follow. You pick your way down the terrace where the charred remnants of grapevines stand as twisted sentinels. Each vine once bore purple clusters that fed entire families. Now each stump offers only shadowed echoes of a lush past. You bend to examine the soil near a grape stalk's base. It feels warmer still, tinged by the day's heat, rather than chilled ash. You suspect that underground springs must run close by warming the earth. If so, that warmth may keep you from freezing once the ash blocks the sun's rays. You brush ash aside with your hand, revealing damp soil beneath. A thin stream of water trickles into a shallow hollow where a small rock juts upward, hard evidence that life-sustaining nourishment flows here. Elated, you scoop a handful of that cool water into your palm. You feel its chill soothe your tongue through the linen mask. Then, gripping your staff, you gesture to Callias. We follow this stream. It must lead to shelter or better vantage. He glances at you with bright eyes, as though grateful for your observation. Together, you head downhill along the water's course, trusting the goat's silent guidance. As you descend, your senses sharpen further. A raven wheels overhead, its ragged wings slicing through the ashen sky. Its caw resonates like a villainous laugh, an omen some believe portends death. Yet today its vigilance seems purposeful, as though scouting ahead for safety. You watch it dip and rise, tracing a path toward a distant grove of pines. You tilt your head upward, gauging the direction of its flight, and decide to follow. The path curves toward a cluster of trees that stand taller than any you've seen since the ash began to fall. These pines, their needles spindly and sparse, form a fragile canopy that filters the falling ash into a fine drizzle. You stride forward, inhaling deeply through your linen mask and tasting the pine resin's faint sweetness, a rare comfort in this ashen realm. Each breath feels less like inhaling dust and more like drawing in life. As you and Callias press on, you glimpse a figure crouched at the base of a pine, an elder shepherd kneeling beside a small fire, its smoke ascending in a thin spiral that vanishes before thickening. He beckons you with a gnarled hand, and you realize he has tended this patch of forest as a hidden refuge for those who know the land's secrets. His presence reassures you if he trusts these trees to shield him. Perhaps they are the sanctuary you seek. You and Callias approach slowly, stepping over scattered pine cones and ash-laden needles. The shepherd's face, deeply lined by years under sun and wind, cracks into a knowing smile. Without a word, he hands you dried figs bound with a strip of cloth, a small kindness that feels like an offering from the gods themselves. You accept them gratefully and offer water from one of your jars. He sips it carefully, then nods toward a nearby hollow beneath a cluster of trees. You descend into that hollow, finding a shallow cave-like recess formed by boulders and earth. The canopy above it is dense enough to catch most of the ash. As you crouch inside, you feel a gentle draft that carries only the scent of pine rather than soot. The ground beneath is soft, cushioned by needles. You set your staff aside and remove your hood for a moment, letting your lungs draw in cooler, sweeter air. From your vantage point, you watch the goat and cat emerge from the underbrush, bristling and wary. They pause at the cave's mouth, as though double-checking that you follow their guidance. You reach out to stroke the goat's flank, murmuring, "Thank you for guiding us." The animal snorts softly, as though acknowledging your gratitude, then retreats into the trees. The cat, whiskers twitching, leaps silently onto a boulder, its eyes bright with intelligence. Settling beside Callias, in this sheltered nook you sip from your water jar and nibble a dried fig. The fig's sweetness bursts on your tongue, an exceptionally tender reminder of sunshine, rain, and seasons before ash. You feel the day's tension unwind as your muscles relax beneath the hush of pine needles. The ash continues to drift above, but its worst seems held at bay by the treetops. The old shepherd kneels outside, tending a small fire still glowing with embers. He inclines his head toward the south. Beyond the trees, you glimpse a faint silhouette of rolling hills, perhaps the path leading to a village untouched by ash. You share a look with Callias, minds aligning on a new plan. When the ashfall lessens, you will follow that silhouette to seek more permanent refuge. But for now, here in the pine-shaded hollow, with animals offering silent counsel and a kind stranger sharing his meager comforts, you sense that even in the midst of catastrophe, life endures. The goat's instincts led you here. The cat's calm affirmed this refuge, the raven's flight pointed the way, and the ants and doves reminded you that survival is woven through the smallest threads of life. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the pine's gentle lullaby to reach your weary mind. Inhale, exhale. The world beyond this hollow may be choked by ash and uncertainty, but here, tucked within nature's protective arms, you find a sliver of serenity. You remind yourself that tomorrow's journey may yet demand every ounce of courage and resourcefulness. But tonight, you have found a pause. With renewed determination, you ready yourself to rest beside the embers, and in slumber you carry the promise that nature's own creatures will guide you onward. For as long as you heed their omens, you will never walk this ashen path alone. Move to higher ground, avoid valleys and coves. You remain in the pine-shaded hollow as dusk begins to settle, the glow of embers flickering in the old shepherd's small fire. The ash overhead drifts in a quiet cascade, but beneath the protective canopy, it feels as though you have found a temporary sanctuary from the world's destruction. Yet you know that true safety lies even farther uphill. The hollowness beneath these pines offers respite, but a tsunami could still sweep across the lower ridges, and creeping ash may collapse this fragile refuge. You rise gently, careful not to disturb the goat and cat that linger at the hollow's edge. Their presence, silent and watchful, reminds you that the land itself has guided you here. You nod to Callias, whose eyes reflect both exhaustion and determination. The old shepherd stands wiping soot from his hands onto his tattered robe. He gestures upward toward a faint, rocky path that snakes further up the hillside. Though the slope appears steep, it promises the advantage of elevation above the reach of sudden waves and away from hidden crevices where molten debris might emerge. With deliberate steps, you begin your ascent. Your staff taps a steady rhythm on the ground as you climb. Each footfall sends tiny plumes of ash drifting down around you, settling onto your shoulders and tracing lines across your face beneath the linen mask. The air is colder here, tinged with pine resin and earth. You inhale deeply, relishing the cleaner scent, and remind yourself that each breath carries you closer to a safer height. Behind you, Callias follows his sandaled feet, slipping once on a patch of loose gravel before he regains balance. You glance back to see the hollow growing smaller, a dark indent among the trees. The shepherd lingers until he can no longer make eye contact, then disappears into the gathering dusk. Though you feel gratitude for him and his offerings, a place to rest and share precious figs, your journey must continue beyond this momentary shelter. As you climb higher, the trees thin out. Below, the ash-draped forest recedes, replaced by bare, rocky slopes. Faint light still clings to the horizon, casting long shadows across the hillside. You pause to glance downward. The coastal plain, once green and teeming, is now a patchwork of gray and black. The sea glimmers faintly, a slate ribbon edged with foam, but you know that foam carries lethal power. Even at a distance, the ocean's currents may churn with hidden intensity. A sudden tremor shudders through the earth. You brace yourself against a boulder, your staff pressing into the ground like an anchor. Callias grips your arm, his voice a low whisper. The mountain stirs again. Indeed, the horizon's ash column churns violently, shifting like the breath of some immense beast. You rise once more, urgency propelling each step. The goats you guided now remain below. You trust they will find safety on gentler slopes. Today, your path leads to even loftier heights. Despite the urgency, you remain mindful of each action. A misstep on these jagged stones could send you tumbling against sharp edges. With slow precision, you shift your weight onto your right foot before lifting your left, placing each sandal carefully on a stable rock. The air grows thinner, each inhale a shallow draft. Your chest tightens with exertion. Still, you push forward, reminding yourself that discomfort here is temporary, while lingering lower could be fatal. Halfway up the steeper portion, you glimpse another group of villagers, mostly elders and children struggling to ascend a narrow ledge. Their steps falter under the weight of ash and fear. An elderly woman slips on a patch of fine gray dust, her knitted shawl tangled around her arm. Without hesitation, you run forward, reaching out to steady her against the rocky wall. The woman's frail hand trembles as she grips yours. "Thank you," she murmurs, eyes glazed with ash and tears. You gently guide her upward, placing your staff behind her bent knee for support, so she can push herself onto firmer rock. Callias joins, to cradle a small child, his face streaked with soot, but resolute. You steady the woman as Callias directs the child, brown curls matted with ash, toward a flat ledge where other villagers rest. Beneath you, the ground slopes so steeply that one misstep would send them punishingly downhill. You keep your voice soft, offering reassurance. "We are almost there. Do not look down, just take my hand and follow." When they reach the small ledge, you pause to ensure they find stable footing. The child clings to Callias's cloak, eyes wide with terror that softens into trust at your calm presence. The woman, though trembling, nods in gratitude before continuing up the path, step by steady step. You glance upward and see that the ridge crests in a handful of yards. Beyond it, you hope lies land untouched by wave and ash. A sudden gust of wind sweeps ash into your eyes, stinging like needles. You raise an arm to wipe it away and squint through the haze. In the dim light, the ridge's silhouette shifts against the darkening sky. You sense that time dwindles. Night will soon envelop the hilltops, and the growing chill could sap your strength overnight. Determination surges through you. You pull the linen mask tighter, steady your grip on the staff, and prepare for the final push. Each step now feels heavier, as though your feet sink slightly with every movement. You plant your staff, firmly using it to steady your weight as you navigate a particularly narrow stretch. One side of the trail drops off precipitously, a jagged descent into unseen darkness. Relying on memory and intuition, you edge forward inch by inch, minding your balance. Your calf muscles burn, but you do not stop. Behind you, the villagers you aided rejoin the trail, pressing close. Among them, you recognize the woman you assisted, now leaning on a sturdy elder who offers support with a gnarled walking stick. The child follows, pressing one small foot in front of the other. You glance at them and feel an immense surge of responsibility. If you falter, they may follow. The weight of that responsibility steels your resolve. As you round a boulder, you glimpse movement, a herd of goats descending from the highest slopes, their hooves clattering down the rocks as they flee. You freeze, and they pass close each goat's eye, reflecting candlelit panic. For a moment, the herd's frightened flight cuts through your own fear, reminding you that nature's wrath spares no one. Their swift exodus down the rocky path is a stark, cautionary tale. Remain above the chaos if you can. You press onward, each breath rasping through the linen mask. The ridge's summit hovers just above you like an elusive promise. A dull rumble permeates the ground, a sense that something is shifting below. Your heart hammers, and instinct urges you to quicken your pace. But reason holds you steady. Reckless speed here could mean disaster. Instead, you find a balanced rhythm staff ahead, left foot staff again, right foot. Finally, you crest the narrow trail and step onto a flat, rocky plateau. The wind whips with sudden ferocity, carrying ash in thick sheets that sting your face. You stand panting as the plateau's expanse stretches before you, jagged stones interspersed with hardy shrubs that cling to cracked crevices. Beyond this high point, you spot a ruined watchtower, its walls crumbled, yet still perched defiantly. That structure, you reckon, once served as a lookout, and now could act as a beacon guiding survivors through the ash-choked darkness. You nod to Callias, tilting your head toward the watchtower. Together you begin the short trek across the plateau. Every step across this barren expanse feels monumental. You hear the hush of ash drifting from the sky, punctuated by the distant roar of surf, and the intermittent tremor beneath your feet. Each inhalation through your linen mask tastes of grit and pine that still lingers behind you. You look back once to see the villagers making their way up smaller shapes, moving carefully along the slope, emerging from the twisted forest of pines. You sense relief ripple through them as they spot the plateau's rocky surface. When you reach the ruined watchtower, you place your staff against the crumbling stone. The tower's base is wide, but fractured large blocks of limestone have tumbled, leaving uneven terrain. You and Callias step carefully among the rubble, finding a rusty metal bracket embedded in the stone, a remnant of the ladder that once spiraled upward. You test the bracket with your hand. It holds. You can climb. You offer your hand to the elderly woman who accompanied the child. With a firm grip on your shoulder, she begins to ascend the jagged stones, one measured step at a time. You follow, urging the child and the rest of the villagers to do the same, guiding them past unstable ledges and broken edges. At the watchtower's midpoint, you pause on a narrow ledge where only one person can stand. Below, the slope falls away steeply. You feel the wind whip more fiercely here, carrying ash like a gale. The world you left behind, forests, villages, harvests, seems to shrink into a silent void. Yet this vantage brings a profound clarity. The destruction spreading across the coastal plain, the ash-streaked sky, and the distant glow of the fading horizon all blend into a surreal panorama. Your hair and shoulders are now silvered with ash, and your boots bear a fine dust layer. Every pore feels raw, but you stand tall. Pushing onward, you reach the watchtower's summit, a jagged ring of stone half open to the sky. From here you feel as if you could bridge the gap between earth and heavens. Below, a vast sea of ash blankets, the world a silent testament to the volcano's wrath. Far to the north, a faint glow still lingers on the horizon, hinting at life beyond this immediate catastrophe. You imagine villages that may have remained untouched so far, perhaps offering refuge and warmth. You guide the villagers to sit against the broken walls, pressing their backs against cool stone. The wind rattles the hollow tower, sending small pebbles skittering across the floor. The vantage here is also a heightened risk. Any stronger tremor could loosen stones. Yet you choose to remain guarded by the height that the tsunami cannot reach. As you steady the elders and cheer the small children who gaze wide-eyed at this surreal spectacle, you realize this plateau is far from comfortable, but it is a foothold above an uncertain abyss. You unsling the remaining jar of water and pass it around. Lips cracked from the ascent, each survivor receives a careful sip, eyes closed in gratitude. The barley you carried, you scatter among them. They press handfuls into their palms, breathing in its nutty scent. The olive oil jar you set aside now becomes a tool for future warmth, a reminder that the simplest comforts may be lifelines in the days ahead. Shadows lengthen as the last light of day sinks. The horizon flares in a pale ember glow. Thera's anger unceasing even as the sky darkens. Below you waves crash against ash-choked shores, invisible yet palpable in their thunderous base. You feel the ground tremble again, a reminder that the earth continues to shift. You press a firm hand to the elderly woman's shoulder. Stay close, rest here. At first light, we will decide our next path. Surrounded by those you helped to guide here, you sit on a shattered stone pillar. Your staff lies across your lap, and you remove your linen mask for a moment to breathe the frigid air. You let the silence envelop you, broken only by the distant roar of the sea and the soft hiss of ash spiraling downward. Though weariness tugs at your limbs and a quiet dread hovers on your breath, you feel a quiet triumph. You carried yourself and others to a height where destruction cannot reach. In this fragile twilight, perched on the battlements of what was once a sentinel-looking point, you allow your mind to rest. The ash will continue to fall through the night, and in the morning, you will climb further or maybe descend to find fresh passage to safety, whichever path seems best, under a sun smothered by ash. For now, as darkness fully envelops the ridge, you draw your cloak tighter around your shoulders and press your staff against your chest, determined to stand watch over those who sought your guidance. In this precarious refuge on this ridge, above all danger, you rest knowing that though the world below is shrouded in ash and uncertainty, you have chosen to rise above, move to higher ground, and face the unknown with steady heart and open eyes. Cover your face from falling ash. You awaken on the rocky plateau to a world dimmed by a curtain of ash. The first light of dawn is a dull, muted glow behind the gray haze. You feel the cold air biting at your skin, but more urgent is the need to guard your lungs from the fine ash that continues to fall like a slow, unending snowfall. Even at this elevation, the dust drifts and swirls, settling on your hair and shoulders as though the sky itself leaks soot. You press your staff into the ground and rise to a standing position. The villagers you shepherded here huddle under the broken watchtower faces, concealed behind ragged strips of cloth. Children snuggle against elders, keenly aware of the fine particles that sting their eyes and scratch their throats. You reach for the remaining length of linen cloth tied to your pack, the same coarse fabric you fashioned into a makeshift mask days ago. Before you tie the linen tight across your mouth and nose, you pause to examine its fibers. The cloth is frayed edges, tattered, but its interwoven threads can still filter enough of the specks to grant you precious breaths of cleaner air. You situate the fabric just below your eyes, pulling the ends around the back of your head. The coarse weave presses snugly against your cheeks, and you breathe in, tasting the faint aroma of dust mingled with the earlier scent of pine. A muted relief washes through you. Your mask is not perfect, but it is all that stands between your lungs and the choking ash. You glance around and see Callias doing the same, securing his mask with careful knots. His fingers tremble as he adjusts the linen, pulling it taut to seal any gaps along the bridge of his nose. You hand him a small twig, rough-hewn, the end sharpened. Use this to clear ash from your mask. When it clogs, you explain. He nods, eyes dark with gratitude, and tucks the twig beside his belt. Behind you, the old shepherd examines his own cloth, knotting and reknotting it until it sits firmly. The goat and cat huddle between rocks, their eyes half closed as the ash drifts around them like ghostly dancers. The goat snorts and shifts its weight, shaking a cloud of gray powder from its coat. Even the animals know the importance of covering their faces, instinctively protecting their nostrils and eyes from the unceasing fall. Above, the ash cloud thickens. Each breath drawn through the dense linen feels like inhaling grit-coated wind. You remind yourself that clean air will become a dwindling resource. You reach into your pack and retrieve 2 small clumps of moss you found earlier near the stream. You press the moss against the inside of your mask, creating an extra filter layer. The moss is damp from the forest's hidden springs, and, though it will soon dry for now, it offers a faint promise of moisture and a slightly softer barrier against the abrasive dust. You place the second clump inside Callias's mask, noticing how his eyes relax momentarily as he inhales through the damp moss. Satisfied, you begin moving across the plateau toward a low ridge where a cluster of hardy juniper bushes stands. Their spindly branches pierce the ashen air, but their evergreen boughs still cling to life. If you can reach the bushes, you might gather their aromatic needles to burn later, creating small pockets of slightly warmer, clearer air where villagers can rest without choking. You gesture for Callias to follow, and together you pick your way over the jagged stones, each step careful to avoid loose rocks that could send you sliding. The wind picks up swirling ash into a fierce gale that lashes your hooded head and thickens the gray shroud. The sound is a low rumble, like waves crashing in some distant subterranean sea. You press forward, pulling the corners of your mask tighter to maintain a seal. Every inhalation feels as though the dust clings to your tongue, each exhale a fragile victory over the choking cloud. Below you, the villagers watch, huddled behind ragged blankets and pieces of torn cloth. They look to you, trusting that you will find a way to ease their burden. You reach the juniper copse and extend your staff to gauge the ground's stability. The soil seems firm enough, surprisingly verdant despite the ash covering it. Beneath your feet, the juniper needles feel springy, cushioning your step. You kneel and gather armfuls of the aromatic sprigs, mindful to brush off excess ash. The pungent fragrance, sharp and almost sweet, drifts into the air as you work. You tuck handfuls into your cloak and nod to Callias, who pads over to help. Together, you carry the juniper toward the villagers. You position small piles of branches and hulks of rock that dot the plateau, creating sheltered pockets that can trap the cleaner air bubbling up from the ground beneath. Tonight, when the village huddles for warmth, these juniper stands will be more than kindling, they will be nodes of respite from the ash-choked atmosphere. You return to the unfinished shrine by the watchtower. Beside it lies a half-carved limestone block remnant of an earlier age, now scorched by the falling dust. You use the flint knife you carry to chip off a wedge of stone, creating a makeshift scraper. Returning to your mask, you run the stone lightly along the linen's interior, clearing caked ash from the fibers. The coarse weave opens once more, allowing for easier breathing. You press your palms against your chest, gratitude and relief intertwining as your filtered breaths loosen. Without the mask, your throat would burn within moments. Even now, thick ash clogs your ears and you can taste the metal tang of iron in the dust. Your eyes sting and water the fine particles scratching across your corneas. Each blink sends a dull ache through your lids. The villagers around you huddle under ragged, ratty cloths, but you know this is not enough. They need better protection. Quietly, you rise and DJ your gaze across the plateau. In a nearby pile of discarded clothing, you spot several villagers' spare tunics torn and abandoned in haste. You stride over, picking up the heaviest garment, a coarse wool tunic still intact. Pulling it over your linen mask, you knot the bottom against the back of your neck, creating a double layer across your mouth and nose. It is bulkier, heavier, but the thicker weave filters more ash. You beckon to the elderly woman you guided here days ago. She rises slowly, her face ashen, and lines etched by fatigue, and you guide her to you. Gently, you wrap the wool tunic over her mask, knotting it behind her head. She inhales, then exhales a strong exhale that once would have been impossible, now feels like a triumph over the suffocating air. You repeat the process for each of the villagers, wrapping the thick wool over their existing linen masks. Some protest briefly. Mothers fret that their babies cannot breathe easily, but you show them how to lift a corner of cloth to test their breath, then seal it back in place. Soon, most find that while breathing through double-layered cloth is steamy and heavy, it spares them the worst of the ash's abrasiveness. You see tears in their eyes, but these are tears of relief rather than agony. In their faces, you witness hope, burning faintly through despair, a testament to the simple power of filtered air. As you finish, the ash storm intensifies. The wind whips and howls, sending sharper shards of grit into the mast faces. From your vantage point, you see the sea surge with relentless waves, though none can reach this lofty plateau. Across the sky, billows of smoke from Thera rise in loops and curls a leafless storm cloud, powered by molten fury. Yet here, beneath the shelter of your masks and the juniper pockets you built, you notice the villagers breathe more steadily. They stand or sit quietly, some even humming soft hymns under their breath, a gentle cadence of resilience amid the chaos. You glance back to the goat and cat. The goat shakes ash from its coat like an ancient ritual, then lowers its head to nibble at a juniper sprig. The cat crouches beneath a boulder's overhang, its face half covered by a tattered cloth one of the shepherd's children had wrapped around its snout. Both animals breathe with a steady rhythm, proof that by protecting their faces, they endure. You smile, gratitude swelling in your chest. As the ash storm rages, you step aside and allow the villagers their moments of stillness. Some close their eyes, tilting their masked faces skyward, as if imploring the gods to spare them. Others huddle in small groups, clasping hands and murmuring prayers beneath the wool. You note each face, a mosaic of determination, fear, and fragile hope. You feel the weight of leadership pressing on your shoulders, but covering your own face, witnessing breaths that do not choke, brings an unexpected clarity. The mountain's fury is immense, but your simple measures are keeping life in a world turned to soot. Now, as the sun's feeble rays fight to penetrate the ash-laden sky, you consider your next steps, securing predictable water sources, ensuring the juniper fires will burn long enough to clear pockets of air, and surveying the ridge's highest points for any settling ash that might cascade in avalanches. Yet, for this moment, you permit yourself to stand in silent vigilance, watching each breath, each rise and fall of each masked chest. In this drifting storm of ash, you and your companions remain bound to the land by the instinct to survive, to seek air untainted by dust. With masks secured and juniper crackling in the wind, you hold fast. The ash may continue to fall, but for as long as you cover your face and breathe through hope, life persists above the chaos. Stay away from boat crowds and unstable structures. You rise before first light, stirred by a distant chorus of roar, ash and wind, rattling against stone, the echo of waves far below, and the murmur of your fellow survivors. Though the plateau's elevation has spared you from the tsunami's reach, the ash storm still rages, cloaking the world in a ghostly haze. You pull your wool-lined shawl tighter around your shoulders and press your staff into the ground for support. Each inhalation through your layered mask tastes of grit and faint juniper. Your lungs burn, but urgent thoughts swirl today. You must keep your people from risking the sea and unstable ruins. Before descending, you scan the plateau's expanse. A distant glow flickers where the ash doesn't fully obscure the horizon scene of the harbor's lights, now ghostly in the smothered dawn. In the haze, you can just make out shapes of boats, tied together in taut silence, bobbing on waves you cannot see. Below them, figures gather, jostling for position in a desperate attempt to flee by sea. The memory of your section, where you guided the girl and mother to safety, is fresh. Those overloaded vessels can capsize in an instant, leaving dozens to drown in the churning surf. You resolve to steer clear of that peril today, even if the harbor's lights promise escape. You descend toward the rocky slope staff, tapping each measured step. The plateau's edge offers a vantage of the jagged path leading down to the coastal plain. Yet you know that path is treacherous. Loose stones, hidden ash drifts, and risk of sudden tremors meet any who attempt the journey now. Instead, you aim to skirt the coastline far enough inland to avoid the crowds and fight for stable structures, if any exist. As you near the slope's base, the ash storm's hush deepens. Only the hiss of falling dust and the distant crash of waves reach you. An uneasy congregation of villagers lingers at the plateau's edge, their eyes fixed on the harbor's shimmer below. Mothers hold small children. Elders lean on shoddily carved crutches, and young men debate whether to risk the descent to boats. One youth Keros points downward, shouting through layers of mask. They have ropes, they'll haul us aboard before the wave reaches them. His voice cracks with hope and desperation. You step forward, raising a hand to caution them. No, you whisper, voice firm. Do you remember the goat's instincts? We followed them here to avoid danger. Now look at the sea. That harbor is packed. Do you think those boats can hold any more? A tremor ripples beneath your feet, as though affirming your words. The villagers glance. Where you point, a handful of small fishing skiffs lie half buried in ash near the shoreline, creaking as they sway. Beyond them, the harbor's bulkier vessels sit at anchor, their hulls shadowy through the haze. You imagine that any sudden tremor could cause these boats to collide or run aground, spilling panicked passengers into frigid, ash-choked water. Keros's eyes fill with tears. But what else can we do? Our supplies will run out by nightfall. The ash will kill us if we stay here. His despair gnaws at your heart, but you remain resolute. We will find a safer shelter, you insist. These boats are death traps, crowded unsteady and exposed to the storm. We must avoid them. You turn, motioning for the villagers to follow you inland. A low ridge juts out long, abandoned as a watchpoint before the eruption. Its stone walls are fractured, but section by section they still stand. You believe these ruins may be more stable than the wooden docks and battering boats. Though nothing here is invincible, it offers more solid footing than a vessel that can capsize when crowded. The ascent is slow, jagged stones, and ash drifts conspire to trip each step. You guide the elderly woman you aided, previously crouched low staff, rooted behind her knee for balance. Behind her, Keros carries his younger sister, her small frame shaking with cold and fear. Their progress is steady, though each breath is labored. When you crest the low ridge, you find yourselves before the skeletal remains of an old watchtower, smaller than the one you first scaled, but its lower walls are more intact. A broad entrance yawns before you, and thicker stone buttresses flank either side, promising more shelter from ashfall and tremors. You guide the villagers through the narrow entrance. Inside, the floor is scattered with rubble, but you spot a partially intact stone vault at the far end. Its ceiling, though cracked, seems robust enough to withstand the ash's weight for a little longer. You direct the group there, urging them to sit against the vault's cool stone. The goat and cat slip in behind you, weaving between legs to find a small gap where they can rest. A hush falls as villagers press their masked faces against the vault, breathing in the cool stone's damp chill. You squat beside Keros, who cradles his sister. She clings to your cloak, trembling. "Sir," he whispers hoarsely, "I'm scared." You offer a calm reassurance. The ships below cannot offer safety now. We will endure this storm together. This vault may collapse eventually, but for tonight it will shield us from burning ash and tremors. We must wait for dawn to decide our next move. You rise, stepping to the entrance to survey the surroundings. Beyond the vault, a narrow corridor leads deeper into darkness, likely storage rooms where grain and wine once lay. You shine a small torch, casting flickering light onto the stone floor, revealing shelves carved into the walls. Perhaps you can find remnants, a few earthenware jars or wooden beams useful for barricading entrances. With Callias alongside you, you venture into the dim interior. The air is cooler here, but the ash still drifts inward, like ghostly fingers. You pick through rubble until your hand touches a clay jar. Carefully, you lift its lid. Inside, a few strands of dried figs cling to the rim, brittle but edible. You gather them and tuck them into your pouch, knowing even a handful will ward off hunger's gnawing for another half-day. Nearby, a rusted iron hook dangles from a shelf once used to hang oil lamps. You secure it to your belt, thinking to use it for prying loose fallen stones or hooking debris out of the way later. As you step back, a sudden tremor rattles the vault's walls, sending small pebbles skittering across the floor. The ceiling emits a low groan as though protesting the ash's weight above. You freeze pulse, thudding, but the vault holds steady. Small chunks of plaster drift down, but no larger collapse ensues. You exhale, steeling yourself for the ordeal ahead. Returning to the larger chamber, you find the villagers huddled in tight clusters, the cat perched on a low ledge, and the goat lying near the vault's base. Their eyes are fixed on you, some fearful, some searching, but all yearning for guidance. You clear your throat voice, echoing softly, "Tonight we remain here. No one ventures down to the harbor. If the ash storm lessens by dawn, we will move further inland, away from both the sea and this unstable vault. For now, we must conserve our strength and trust that we can endure." A hush follows your words, punctuated only by the rasp of masked breathing. A young mother cradling a baby swathed in cloth raises a hand. "Sir," she croaks voice, "scratchy the ash is so thick. My baby's breath is shallow." "Will she be all right?" You kneel beside her, offering the damp moss you preserved 2 days ago. "Place this inside her mask," you instruct, helping her tuck the moss gently under the cloth. She does so, and the baby's eyes flutter open, drawing a deeper, steadier breath. Relief softens the mother's eyes. "Thank you," she whispers, tears mingling with soot on her cheeks. You glance at the goat, which stands and shakes its coat, sending a cloud of ash swirling in the torchlight. Its head ducks beneath the vault's arch, seeking the cooler, denser air closer to the stone floor. You follow, leaning close enough to feel the vault's reassuring chill on your skin. "We will be safe here," you murmur to the goat, and its gentle bleat seems to echo agreement. Time stretches. Stray tremors come and go, shaking the vault's loose stones. Ash filters through small cracks in the roof, dusting the suspension for your torch's flame. You lend a staff to one of the elders, who presses it against the vault wall to steady trembling legs. The cat curls into your lap, purring softly, a small warmth against the tormenting cold outside. Night falls fully, and the vault's darkness grows deeper than any ash-choked dawn. Your torch guttering you, move to stoke its flame with the rusted hook, coaxing the fire to brighter glow. Its light reveals faces drawn with fear but illuminated by flickers of hope. You distribute the dried figs among small hands. Each survivor receives one crushed between teeth to release a faint sweetness. A murmur of gratitude ripples through the group, followed by a hush as exhaustion overtakes alertness. You step near the vault's entrance to keep watch, listening for tremors and sniffing for acrid smoke that might signal a new vent opening on Thera. Through the narrow doorway, the ash storm rages like a living thing, wind-driven gusts that claw at the rock face. In the dim light, only shapes move, trees tossed by the gale, a shadow of goat and cat huddled near the vault's edge, and farther below, the ghostly outline of boats locked in place on the dark water. Your mind drifts to the morning's plan. When dawn's glow penetrates the ash, you will guide the villagers along an inland path, avoiding both the sea and any unstable ruins. A road leads toward a valley that, though lower, is distant from the shoreline and still above floodplains. A river's mouth there may hold drinkable water. You recall ancient maps your father once studied, and you commit the route to memory. But for now, night claims the plateau. You kneel beside the goat and cat, offering a gentle stroke to each. Their quiet presence steadies your racing thoughts. You untie your mask for a moment, inhaling shallow breaths of the vault's cool air. Each inhale a reminder that simple stone can outlast rushing waves and unrelenting ash. You replace your mask and return to your vigil at the entrance staff planted before you, like a sentinel. As you gaze into the swirling darkness, you realize that the sea's roar cannot reach you here, and the vault's stone walls cradle you and your companions against the ash's bite. You feel the weight of responsibility heavy on your shoulders, but you also feel a deep sense of purpose. You have guided these villagers away from doomed boats and into a relative sanctuary. Though your own strength wanes, you find resolve in the knowledge that you have offered them a fighting chance. Tonight, inside this fractured stone vault, you stand as guardian and guide. The mountain roars beyond your watch, but within these walls you hear only ragged breath and the steady murmur of survival. You take one last glance toward the harbor's flickering lights, tiny glints like dying stars, and turn your gaze inward toward the lives you protect. And as the vault silence swells around you, you hold fast, ready to rise with dawn's first glow and lead your people to a safer shore. One not on the sea, but on firmer ground, where ash cannot smother hope, and waves cannot sweep away life. Form a small group, strength in numbers. You rise at twilight, the ash storm having eased to a persistent patter that falls on the stone vault like an endless lullaby. Though the gusts have calmed, the sky remains shrouded in a thick gray veil. You tug your linen mask into place and step into the main chamber, aware that any movement sends small clouds of dust drifting through the torchlight. The villagers you guided here, men, women, and children, huddle closely against the cool stone, seeking comfort in shared warmth. Tonight, more than ever, you realize that survival depends not just on shelter and supplies, but on unity. As you move among the clusters of villagers, you meet each pair of anxious eyes. The elderly woman you steadied on the hillside grips her shawl teeth, chattering, though her woolen cloak should keep the cold at bay. The youth, Keros, leans against a broken pillar, holding his sister's hand. Their faces, illuminated by wavering torchlight, reflect fear and uncertainty. Above all, you see in their expressions the question, what do we do now? You take a steadying breath, allowing the hush to settle before you speak. Gather close, you whisper, voice gentle but firm. We must remain together. United, we share warmth, water, and hope. Separate, we risk wandering into ash drifts and losing our way. You gesture to the vaulted chamber's central floor, where the goat and cat move around in contented circles, oddly comforted by the murmur of human voices. If we stay as one, we can watch over each other, share food, share stories, and share strength. You clear a small patch of floor, gently pushing aside loose stones, so you and the others may sit in a loose circle. You kneel among them, placing each jar of remaining water within reach. We have enough for one more day, if we ration carefully, you say, but only if we manage these resources together. A hush falls, broken only by the distant rumble of waves and the soft hiss of falling ash. You look at Keros. Stand with me, you say, and he rises, holding his sister's hand firmly. You invite the elderly woman to sit beside you, her gnarled fingers resting on the jar of water. A few children cling to their mother's legs, peering out from behind torn cloth masks, curiosity and fear warring in their eyes. You sense that the group's spirit wavers, each person's panic threatens to pull the others into despair. You settle your staff across your lap and continue gently. Tonight, we form ourselves into a small band family, not by blood, but by circumstance. We share each burden. One person tends the fire. Another listens for tremors. Another watches the valley below for signs of ash movement or danger. When dawn comes, we must move together along the inland trail that avoids both the sea's vengeance and unstable ruins. You pause to let your words sink in. The goat and cat rest at opposite ends of the circle, silent guardians. Listen to the animals, you murmur. They trust in each other and in their instincts. We too must trust in one another. If I stray from this circle, I might be lost. If each of you thinks only of yourselves, we risk losing each other. A breeze sneaks through a crack in the vault's wall, sending a flutter of ash across the floor. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the tremor beneath your knees, a reminder that Thera still stirs, that the earth remains brittle. When you open them, you see determination flicker in the old shepherd's gaze. Though his face is worn like ancient parchment, his spirit remains unbowed. He nods, slowly, as if confirming his willingness to abide by the group's bond. Beside him, a young mother clasps her baby's small hand around the coarse cloth of her own mask. Together, they face the hush. You rise and move to stand in the circle's center. The goat nudges your foot, as though urging you onward. You speak softly, your voice carrying that soothing timbre meant to calm both fear and weariness. We will form watches through the night, you say, so none of us will face the ash storm or tremors alone. When I was a child, my father taught me that fire warms more than bodies, it warms hearts. As long as we remain in each other's light, we can face this darkness. You pass a torch to the elderly woman, who grips it with thin fingers. You instruct her gently. Hold this. When you see ash swirl unusually or shake beneath your feet, raise it high. We will know to gather quickly to brace ourselves. She nods her knuckles, white around the torch's handle. You hand the goat's tether to Keros. Keep watch on the animals. They sense tremors before we do. If they move restlessly, wake me, and we will disperse the group to safer positions. He grips the tether, and the goat steps into the circle, its soft bleats mingling with the hush of ash. You step back and signal to Callias. Go find the strongest among the villagers, those who can help carry supplies. Keep them near our circle. We must be ready to depart at dawn. If any of us cannot walk, we will bring them. He nods and slips away with 2 young men, leaving you to marshal the group. You move to the entrance of the vault, peering into the swirling gray beyond. Moonlight, if one could call it that, casts a faint glow through the thick ash, offering just enough light to see the silhouettes of trees swaying in the ashen gale. You inhale, feeling the linen and wool layers filter each breath. The cat's soft purr at your feet reminds you that gentleness endures even amid chaos. Turning back to the circle, you kneel beside the woman with the baby. We will take turns keeping her warm, you say, cradling the child gently. When one person's watch ends, they will lie down to rest while another takes their place. The mother looks at you with gratitude, her gaze steady. You place a hand on her shoulder, ensuring she knows she is not alone. Next, you look to a young man with strong arms, whose leather sandals bear deep ash scratches. You will carry the staff and escort the elderly, you instruct, pointing to the woman you helped earlier, and to another elder leaning heavily on a wooden crutch. Guide them to higher ground if the earth shakes or if ash blocks our path. Keep their spirits high. They are our wisdom. The young man nods shoulders, squaring at the weight of responsibility you entrust him. A mother, clutching 2 children, presses forward. You and I will gather what little warmth we can, you tell her. We will tend the small juniper embers beneath the vault's arch. If we keep those fires alive, we can share their warmth when tremors force us to run. She bows her head briefly and turns toward the corner where the juniper embers still glow faintly among the ashes. You give a gentle smile, every spark counts. At last, you study the arch of survivors, young and old, fierce and frightened. You draw in a steadying breath and speak, "Together we will face whatever comes. You are not alone. We stand as we're one. Each person's life intertwined with another's. In the morning we will set out along that inland path, trust the goats and cats to guide us and share our burdens. Tonight, we remain close, supporting each other as the ash falls and the earth hums." Silence settles again, but now it isn't the hush of fear. It's a hush of resolve. The goat nuzzles the elder's hand, and the cat coils in her lap, purring, as though acknowledging the pact you formed. The torchlight flickers across faces illuminated by shared purpose. You step aside slightly, letting others draw nearer to the warmth of the embers and the simple comfort of togetherness. Mounting tremors, though faint, begin to ripple through the vault's stone. You gently raise your hand, and the torchbearer lifts the flame high. The flickering light bounces across the vaulted ceiling, marking the tremor's rhythm like a slow heartbeat. Babies whimper, but parents hush them, pressing children close. The young man you spoke to stands guard at the entrance, ready to assist any who stumble. The mother, tending the embers, stirs the coals, coaxing tiny flames to life. You take a moment to kneel in a corner, staff planted before you, and close your eyes. Each inhale tastes of ash, but also of determination. Each exhale is a pledge to stay together to protect this newfound family. When you open your eyes, you meet the gaze of each survivor, the old shepherd nodding as if impressed by your marshalling, the goat's warm, trusting eyes, the cat's calm, wise stare. You feel a surge of tenderness for these creatures and people alike. A larger tremor shakes the vault, rattling dust from the rafters. Instinctively, you straighten, scanning the group. The torch flickers dangerously, smoke curling into your eyes. You gesture softly to the torchbearer, "Keep it steady. Do not fear." He steadies the flame, and the glow steadies, reflecting resilience in the eyes that watch it. As the tremor subsides, you offer a small, reassuring smile. "Rest now," you say, voice gentle. Our watches begin soon, but first close your eyes and allow the rhythm of the ash to lull you. We will wake before dawn, ready to move as one. One by one, the survivors lean back, against stone, drawing blankets, tighter, slowing their breaths. Even the goat lies down on its side, soft hoofbeats, silent against the stone. The cat curls into a ball on your lap, purring itself to sleep. You remain on guard a little longer, listening to the drumming of ash outside, the distant crash of waves, and the hushed breathing of those you protect. When you know their sleep is deep enough, you shift your watch, joining the small group tending the juniper embers. The aromatic smoke drifts through the vault, easing tight lungs and offering tiny reprieves of clean air. In the darkness, your allies, human and animal alike, sleep in fits and starts, comforted by the embers' glow and your quiet presence. You hover by the fire, eyes half-lidded, maintaining vigilance so their dreams are not shattered by sudden tremors or collapsing stone. Each time you stir, you toss a small branch onto the coals, sending a gentle flicker of flame upward, a promise that someone is watching, that someone cares. Time stretches, measured by the embers' glow, and the rhythmic rise and fall of your breath. Somewhere in the depths of your mind, you envision the dawn's faint light, an awakening you must lead. But for now, you remain rooted in this vaulted refuge, your heart entwined with the small band you shepherd. In that unity, you discover that the greatest shelter in this ashen world is not stone or height, but the collective resolve to stay together. Strength in numbers, hope in shared hearts. Listen for the roar, prepare for the wave. You rouse just before dawn, the pale gray light filtering through cracks in the vault's walls. The ash storm has settled to a fine drizzle, but a low, ominous rumble echoes through the hills, a distant growl that shivers beneath your feet. Your heart quickens as you tug the layered cloth tighter over your face, breathing shallow breaths to conserve oxygen in the ash-laden air. Every fiber of your being tells you that the sea has not forgotten its vengeance. The wave approaches, and you must be ready. Carefully, you lift the goat from its slumber. Its ears flick at the growing tremor tail, twitching like a warning flag. Beside you, the cat stretches and pads to the vault's entrance, nose tipped upward to sample the morning air. You whisper to each, "We must listen for the roar. It will guide us." The goat nods in its own way, soft snorts escaping through nostrils dusted with ash, and you sense that together you will heed nature's signals. Keros, still groggy, wakes at your whisper. He clutches his sister's hand, eyes wide behind the cloth that barely keeps the ash at bay. You offer him a reassuring nod. "Gather close," you murmur, voice low. "The wave is coming." We listen. When we hear the roar, we move together. The young siblings press closer to you, and you place a firm hand on Keros's shoulder. In the dim light, his face is pale but resolute. You step to the entrance, peering out into a world draped in ghostly gray. The vault's opening frames a scene of twisted olive trees and slate-colored hills. But beyond the sea is a subtle gray ribbon, nearly indistinguishable from sky. As you watch, a faint swell undulates beneath the waves, a silent rise and fall that belies its true power. Your staff's tip taps on the rocky floor, echoing like a heartbeat. A tremor rattles through the vault, and you press a hand against the limestone wall. Dust flutters from the ceiling, but the structure holds. You turn your gaze seaward, listening. You can almost imagine the crests building, out of sight, whispering to each other across the expanse of water. Soon we will crash upon the shore. The breeze carries a briny scent, and each breath through the cloth tastes of salt and ash, a bittersweet reminder of life's fragility. You slide back inside, voice hushed. Hear that you ask. The villagers press their ears to the ground, a few pressing palms to cooled stone. From a distance, they catch the faintest growl, like a giant stirring in a deep slumber. Each breath they draw through masks becomes an act of defiance against the choking dust. The goat shifts, lowering its head, as though bracing for impact. You sense that it knows together you will face the tide. Gingerly, you move among the group, positioning them in a loose U-shape facing the vault's entrance. Each person's eyes reflect fear, but you send them nods of encouragement. Stay calm. We stand together. The old shepherd cradles a small torch, the flame dancing atop the first tremor's sigh. You place a hand on the elder's other shoulder. When the roar comes full, you murmur, "Raise that torch high. We will know it is time." He nods, stiffly leaning into your steadied hand. The cat leaps onto your lap, purring softly, its small body a comforting warmth. You stroke its back, whispering, "Stay close, watcher of watchers." Your presence steadies us. Its whiskers quiver in a slow nod, as though acknowledging a sacred duty. The goat settles beside Keros and his sister, forming a living barrier that feels unexpectedly reassuring. In this silent communion of human and animal, you recognize that unity is your only shield against the wave's wrath. Moments stretch into minutes. The ash drizzle intensifies, falling like fine sand. The sea's hum grows louder, a rumble that seeps into bone. You press both palms to your chest, feeling your own heartbeat sync with the earth's rhythm. Every inhalation is a battle against the ash, but you steady your breath, using the cloth and moist moss to filter each gulp of air. Suddenly, a distant roar crescendos, richer and more urgent than mere wind. It reverberates through the rocky corridor, a low but thunderous growl that vibrates through your staff and into your fingertips. Now you breathe, voice urgent but steady. You nudge Keros and whisper time to move. Remember the goat's path. The animal rises, lantern gaze fixed toward a narrow channel behind the vault, a hidden path winding inland and upward where the old shepherd once showed you a concealed climb. You usher the villagers to their feet. The mother with the baby secures her child against her chest. The elderly woman grips her crutch. You offer your staff to the weakest, pressing it into their hands. One step at a time, together, you murmur. The goat nudges Keros forward, and Keros places a tentative foot in the sock of ash-dusted stone. Slowly, the group follows, senses attuned to each tremor's echo. As you move, the roar intensifies, a rolling thunder growing closer, a giant's footfall beneath the waves. The ground rumbles, cracks forming in places where the vault's floor meets the slope. Your boots slip on loose ash, each step a test of balance. Above, the sky darkens as the ash cloud shifts, blotting out the milky dawn. The cat darts ahead, tail flicking as though guiding the way through the swirling dust. You follow its lead, stepping over small debris and wedged stones. A particularly fierce quake shakes the earth, sending loose rocks tumbling down the narrow passage. You hold out your staff to brace the elderly woman as she hobbles past. She grips the cold wood like a lifeline, her breath ragged but determined. You glance back to see Keros steady his sister, offering an arm for support. The goat leads them, hooves sure on uneven ground, a silent beacon of resilience. Below, the roar reaches a near-deafening volume, waves slamming into submerged ridges in a fury of whitecaps and spray. You know that the wave, once unleashed, will climb the slopes in a matter of minutes. Each second holds the weight of life and death. You tighten the knot on your hood, pulling the cloth mask higher, pressing your back straight to meet the challenge. At last you emerge onto a slender terrace carved into the mountainside. The goat pauses, turning to ensure the villagers follow. You guide the mother and baby first, instructing her to hold the child above the ash. Behind her, Keros helps his sister navigate the narrow ledge. You offer encouragement in quiet whispers. Steady now. Almost there. Keep your gaze forward. The terrace leads to a stony staircase hewn long ago for shepherds and wood-gatherers. The steps are narrow, uneven, but ascending. Them means putting more distance between you and the sea. You press your staff into the first step and pull yourself upward, higher and higher. The roar below flattens into a deafening crash, the sound of 1,000 beasts stamping in unison. Each tremor rocks your body, but you push your legs, lifting foot after foot in a rhythm only the mountain slope understands. Behind you, the villagers form a single file line, the goat nudging forward, the cat weaving through their ankles, and each person gripping your staff or the rough stone walls. The reef-like ridges of ash slip behind you, And though the roar's resonance still rattles your ears, you focus on your footing and the promise of safety atop the next ridge. Above the sky lightens for a fleeting moment, a pale, urgent glow that signals the sun's attempt to pierce the ash. Through that glow, you glimpse a great surge of foam boiling against the shoreline. The wave's lip breaks towering white against the gray. Your breath catches. You quicken your pace, whispering higher, higher. The goat's steady hoofbeats encourage each step. At the upper landing, you reach a small grove of twisted pines. Their needles, sparse but stubborn, offer a tiny island of shelter from falling ash. You guide the villagers beneath the boughs, each person crouching low to avoid the worst of the airborne grit. The mother, with the baby, settles against a pine trunk, tucking her child inside her cloak. The elderly woman presses her back to a gnarled root, leaning heavily on her staff, as though it too were a lifeline. You stand at the grove's edge, breathing shallowly, as the wave's roar finally passes overhead, a deafening thunder that echoes across the hillside before sliding into distant rumble. You feel the earth tremble beneath your feet as the wave crashes against lower ridges, sending sheets of foaming water toward the ash-choked shore. You close your eyes, feeling the mountains exhale through the ground. Then a hush settles, as though the wave's fury has drained the world of sound. You lower your staff and exhale, voice soft in the sudden silence. We made it. The goat nudges your knee, and you place a hand on its head. The cat rubs against your leg, purring, as though offering gratitude for life's continued breath. You glance at the villagers. Keros and his sister share a weary hug. The mother rocks her child gently. The elderly woman leans heavily on you, eyes closed in relief. Above the ash continues to fall in a quiet drizzle, but here in the pines the needles catch much of it, creating a fragile canopy of whispered protection. You press your hand against the rough bark, feeling its warmth. In that touch you know that though nature's fury is immense, you have followed its omens by listening for the roar and trusting the goat's guidance to find refuge above the wave's reach. As you settle beside the pine's gnarled roots, you allow your eyes to close, focusing on the steady fall of ash and the distant murmur of the sea. In your mind, you replay the moments, the tremors, the goat's gentle nudges, the cat's watchful presence, the villager's unwavering trust. Each memory is a thread woven into the tapestry of survival, a narrative of courage spun from the simplest acts of listening and moving together. Tonight, as ash drifts like snow in the wind, you rest with a soul both weary and triumphant. The wave has thundered below, but you and your small band stand together on steady ground. And though the ash storm will persist, you have learned to heed its whispers, to trust the creatures who guide you, and to find sanctuary in shared resolve, so that when you awake tomorrow, you will face the ashen dawn, not as solitary souls, but as a steadfast circle beneath a trembling sky. Observe the aftermath. Move with caution. You lie, nestled beneath the twisted pines, the needles overhead forming a fragile ceiling that catches much of the drifting ash. The roar of the wave has receded into a distant memory, replaced by a hushed murmur of falling dust and the soft crackle of pine needles settling into ash-laden crevices. Your body aches the climb uphill, burned muscles you didn't know could ache so deeply, but you dare not linger longer than necessary. The world below has been reshaped by fire and water, and you must now venture forth to find a more sustainable refuge. Slowly you rise, pressing your hand to the grooved bark of a pine trunk. The rough ridges feel impossible, solid beneath your fingertips, a comfort after days of shifting ash and trembling ground. You inhale through your layered mask, tasting the bitter tang of soot, mixed with pine resin, a reminder that even in devastation, life persists. The goat and cat stir beside you. The goat nudges a small ash-covered shrub for nourishment, and the cat pads toward a gap in the pine canopy to survey the gloom. You gather your staff, its shaft still sturdy from the day's climb, and secure the remaining jars of water and barley sack to your belt. As you prepare to move, you glance at Keros and his sister, huddled near the pine's roots. The girl's eyes are weary but bright, and he offers you a determined nod when your gaze meets his. The elderly woman, leaning on her crutch, takes a careful step forward, her face lined with both relief and anxiety. The mother clutches her baby close, baby's small form, nestled inside a wool blanket improvised from ashes. Each breath they draw, filtered through cloth, carries a fragile hope. You speak softly to the group. We will move now, but be cautious. The ash may conceal pitfalls and molten streams. The goat bleats quietly, as if echoing your caution, and the cat's ears twitch, sensing movements in the ashen air. You lead them to the edge of the pine grove, where the slope descends gently toward a shallow ravine. Through the swirling gray, you can see the outlines of ash-drowned terraces, their stone walls jagged and partially collapsed. You recall that these ancient terraces once held orchards and fields food sources that may now lie buried or lost. Each step downward is a test of balance. The ash underfoot is surprisingly unstable, shifting in fine clouds that rise with each footfall. You lift your staff high and tap ahead, searching for solid ground. Occasionally, the tip strikes a hidden stone, a reassuring click, while other times it sinks too deeply, warning that the soil has given way to soft ash, concealing a potential pit, or brittle crust, overcooled lava. You guide the villagers one by one, offering your staff to steady the elderly woman and Keros as he supports his sister, preventing both from stumbling into hidden voids. The goat leads the way. Hooves sound and deliberate, sniffing each patch of ground for firm footing. The cat darts ahead, tail high, alert to each tremor and crackle. You follow their guidance, pressing the goat's choices into the path and trusting the cat's silent lead. Midway down, the ground shifts suddenly, beneath Keros' sister Ash collapsing like a trapdoor. You catch her elbow, just in time, yanking her back, as loose stones cascade into a narrow fissure. Her breath catches in her throat, but you steady her, murmuring, "Safe now." Always watch the goat's steps. Below, the ravine's floor slopes gently to a broadened plain, once lush with terraces. Now it is a surreal expanse of gray, punctuated by the blackened stumps of olive trees and charred slabs of what remained of homes long ago. The wind carries ash in swirling eddies, distorting distances and shapes. You pause at the ravine's edge, scanning for any signs of water or game. Though you know the wave swept most river courses clean, you suspect that a hidden spring may still bubble beneath the surface in sheltered pockets. You guide the group across the shallow ravine, each person following your slow cadence. The ravine's walls are cracked basalt, sharp and unyielding. The goat nimbly leaps over the worst of them, while the cat zigzags, avoiding loose scree. You drop to one knee, pressing an ear to the ground, listening for the faintest trickle of water. At first, you hear only the low moan of wind across ash, but then, beneath it, a subtle gurgle reaches your senses. You point, and the villager nearest you kneels beside a depression in the ash, brushing away fine dust. Beneath your touch, cool darkness yields to damp soil. You scrape back more ash, revealing a narrow seep of water trickling into a small basin. Water, you whisper, your heart lifting. You cup your hands beneath the trickle and draw in a precious gulp, tasting its crisp freshness. The villager beside you rushes to fill a small jar, releasing a muffled exclamation of relief. The mother kneels beside her baby, dipping a cloth into the water to moisten the child's lips. You watch them for a moment, every sense keenly alive, before lifting your gaze to the terraces ahead. The terraces, once carved for agriculture, are now fractured and overlaid in ash. Yet, among the ruins you spot a shallow, cave-shaped alcove beneath a collapsed stone wall. Its entrance is partially obscured by ash-laden boulders. You squat beside the goat, feeling the earth around the alcove. It radiates coolness, signaling an underground pocket where ashfall has not yet fully reclaimed all. Gently, you brush aside debris, revealing a narrow passage that slopes into darkness. You feel the reassurance of firmer rock at your fingertips. "Shelter," you say, voice hushed, as though speaking to the stone itself. "Follow me, but step mindfully." You step into the alcove's entrance, staff tapping to guide each step as the space narrows. The walls are rough basalt, blackened by ash, but still solid. You lead the villagers inside, turning back to see the goat squeezing through beside them. The cat slips ahead, into the dim light, flicking its tail, as though confident the space is safe. Inside the alcove widens to a small chamber, barely enough for all of you to sit, with knees drawn up. You place a hand on the smooth rock, feeling its cool embrace fending off the unrelenting ash. Stay here, you instruct. The goat will stand guard at the entrance, and the cat will watch the darkness beyond. We may rest and gather strength. You step outside once more to retrieve the jars of water and barley, ensuring each villager has a sip and a handful. You break a small handful of barley kernels between your fingers and place them into the goat's feed pan, a show of gratitude for its guidance. The goat munches gratefully, bleating softly, as you return to the alcove. Inside the alcove offers a fragile sanctuary. The air is a touch cooler and slightly damp, carrying a faint mineral scent, an odd but comforting contrast to the ubiquitous ash. The villagers settle on the rocky floor backs pressed against the basalt walls. The mother cradles her baby, pressing a dampened cloth to the child's lips. Keros supports his sister, both leaning against the goat's flank for warmth. The elderly woman rests near the back, her crutch discarded at her feet, as she rubs soot from her mask in silent contemplation. You glide to the alcove's entrance, scanning the ashen plain before you. The terrace slopes down to a sunken courtyard where a collapsed pillar lies, once marking a communal gathering spot. You imagine that before the eruption, villagers would converge here for festivals and harvest celebrations. Now, only silence reigns, broken by the hiss of ash under a ghostly sun. The sea beyond remains hidden, but its roar echoes faintly, a reminder that its fury lies in wait. As you close your eyes for a moment, the goat's steady breathing and the cat's gentle purr provide a lullaby of resilience. You press a finger to your temple, feeling the dull ache of sunburned cheeks and narrowed eyes. The ash storm's aftermath has left each survivor's body battered, but their spirits remain resilient. In this alcove's cool reprieve, you sense an ember of hope flickering. Suddenly, a tremor ripples through the alcove's floor, a gentle but undeniable reminder that the earth still stirs. You steady yourself, hand pressed against the wall, and wait for its cessation. When the ground stills, you turn to the villager's voice, firm but kind. "We must move again. There is more to explore on higher terraces," you say. "Food grows in hidden pockets. We might find olives or figs beyond the ash. But we must remain vigilant. Each step risks trapped vents or unstable walls." A hush follows your words. The goat's ears twitch. The cat pads forward to peer into darkness beyond the alcove. You slide your staff's tip along the floor, testing each inch of the narrow chamber's exit. When you sense no immediate danger beneath your feet, you turn back to the group, offering a small nod. One by one, they rise, smoothing ash from their clothing. Though their limbs protest, each sets, jaw determinedly. You provide your staff to the weakest, huddling the cat against Keros's cloak so its warmth might return color to his sister's cheeks. Outside the alcove, the terraces slope upward, each level promising a fragile promise of life. You guide the group to a terrace where a single olive tree, scorched but still alive, stands sentinel. Its blackened trunk bears a few ash-dusted olives, small flecks of green amid gray. You pluck one gently, tasting its bitter flesh, and then guide each villager to do the same, subtle nourishment to spare until better food can be found. Each bite is quiet gratitude. Life, though battered, still offers sustenance. As you ascend toward higher terraces, the goat leads sure-footed, and the cat darts ahead to inspect each terrace's fissures. At each level, you test the ground with your staff before allowing the villagers to follow. You show them how to brush ash aside to reveal hidden patches of herbs and low-lying shrubs. You demonstrate how to cup water from slight depressions where runoff gathered, then filter it through cloth. Each lesson is a fragile reminder that survival depends on constant learning, listening to the goat's path, trusting the goat and cat's instincts, and reading the land's subtle cues. When you finally reach a broad terrace crowned by a grove of half-charred olives and a solitary fig tree, you pause. The cat leaps to the tree's low-hanging branches, nibbling at the sweet, ash-flecked figs. You allow the villagers to harvest a few, carefully shaking ash from each fruit before passing it around. The mother offers a fig to her baby, whose chubby hand clasps the fruit with eager determination. The baby's eyes flutter closed at the first taste, an expression of pure delight in this desolate world. You stand at the terrace's edge, arms outstretched, feeling the ash-laden wind press against your cloak. You gaze out across the vast plain. Ash-buried homes, collapsed terraces, and distant smoke plumes rising from hidden vents. Beyond lies a hint of green, the higher slopes of the mountain, where a thin ribbon of sunlight penetrates the ash cloud, illuminating a patch of land as though the gods themselves signaled a promise of renewal. Raising your staff, you catch the goat's eye. It looks to the far ridge, head tilting, as though recalling hidden paths beyond the ash. You turn to Keros and whisper, "We go there next." He nods, resolving to face each step with courage. The elderly woman grips her staff, renewing her determination. The mother cradles her baby healthy for a moment's reprieve, and the cat, bristling with feline confidence, darts ahead to scout the faint path toward that shaft of sunlight. In that moment, you understand that the disaster's aftermath, though terrifying, has also forged a bond, human and animal, united by shared struggle. And with each cautious step you take toward that patch of light, you carry with you not only the will to survive, but the promise of rediscovery, a chance to reclaim life from the ashes and to rebuild upon the solid ground of hope, guided by instincts as old as nature herself. Tend wounds, share warmth, and stay alert. You settle into the small grove of olive and fig trees on the high terrace, their gnarled trunks offering a fragile roof against the drifting ash. Though the air here is slightly freer of dust, each breath still tastes faintly of soot. Your muscles ache from the climb, and every step down to the ravine left you bruised and scraped. Now, beneath the tree's sparse canopy, you realize it's time to tend wounds, share warmth, and maintain vigilance. First, you inspect your own body. Your calves throb, and a shallow cut along your right shin stings whenever the breeze carries ash across it. You squat and press a finger to the wound, feeling grit caked around the edges. You reach into your satchel for the small tin of salted water. You carried an old remedy your mother once taught you for cleaning cuts. You pour a few drops over the scrape, wincing as the cold liquid mingles with ash and blood. The sting is sharp but purifying. Next, you wrap a thin strip of linen from your bag around the wound, knotting it snugly, but not too tight, ensuring circulation remains. Keros watches quietly as you work. His sister sits beside him, clutching a half-eaten fig, her eyes reflecting relief at reaching safety. You beckon Keros close. Your sister's ankle was twisted. When ash collapsed, you whisper, indicating the swelling just above her foot. You remove her small sandal and uncover the ankle, brushing away ash with a damp cloth torn from your pack. The skin beneath is reddened and tender. You apply a poultice of crushed fig. I recall that the fruit's moisture and sugar can draw out inflammation, and wrap her ankle in another strip of linen. She winces, but nods bravely, pressing her small hand to your arm in gratitude. Nearby, the elderly woman leans against a twisted olive trunk. You notice her hands tremble as she adjusts her shawl, trying to ward off the chill. You hand her the small tin containing a few olive oil-soaked cloth pads, another remedy inherited generations past. Press these gently against your palms, you instruct. She places one pad in each hand, and the warmth of the oil seeps through the ash-caked fabric, easing the arthritic pain in her fingers. As her eyes close softly, you feel gratitude flood your chest. These simple comforts, though humble, mean survival to those you guide. The mother sits beneath a low-lying olive branch, her baby curled in her arms. The infant's eyes flutter as tears mix with ash on tiny cheeks. You approach quietly and offer a small cloth drenched in salted water. Gently wipe her face, you murmur, demonstrating how to remove the abrasive dust without aggravating the skin. The mother dabs at her baby's cheeks and brow, and the child cries softly before settling back into her mother's warmth. You take a moment to press a hand against her mother's back, offering silent solidarity. At the same time, Callias tends to small chores. He has collected fragments of olive leaves and scattered them into a small creek-fed ditch where water flows beneath a thin film of ash. Together, you dip cloths into that stream and soak them in cool water, then pass them around so that each person can dab at their face, cleaning soot from their eyes and nose. The goat and cat remain on watch, poised at opposite ends of the grove, one munching on sparse shrubs, the other perched alertly on a low branch. Their calm vigilance reminds you that danger may still lurk even in this relatively sheltered spot. As each villager finds relief, muscles loosening throats, cooled hearts steady, you gather a small bundle of twigs and brush them together until they ignite beneath your flint knife's spark. A flicker of flame dances upward, catching dry leaves and olive shards. You cradle this fragile fire inside a ring of stones you found on the terrace, careful to keep the flame away from fallen ash that might extinguish it. Soon, warm tendrils of smoke rise, carrying the sweet, resinous aroma of burning olive wood. One by one, villagers move closer to share the fire's warmth. The mother wraps her baby in the baby's woolen blanket and leans into the glow, the child's gentle breath mingling with the flickering heat. The elderly woman moves her clay jar beside a small patch of firelight, using the warmth to ease the chill in her bones. Even the goat steps onto a flat stone heated by embers standing, so that its belly absorbs the fire's residual heat. The cat curls at the fire's edge, its fur catching sparks of amber light as though acknowledging a reprieve. While the fire crackles and the group draws warmth, you remain alert. Your staff stands propped against a nearby rock, its tip ready to brace anyone who loses footing. Each time a tremor shudders through the terrace, you tense, scanning the hillside for rock slides or ash avalanches. When the ground stills, you nod to the villagers. All is calm for now. Their eyes meet yours, trusting your leadership, and they settle again, breathing easier around the hearth. Next, you reach for a small leather pouch that holds pressed figs and barley cakes. Breaking small pieces off, you distribute portions evenly enough to quell hunger until you can seek more substantial food. Each villager accepts a handful, chewing slowly to savor the sweet, earthy taste. The goat, perceiving the bounty, bleats softly, and you feed it a few barley kernels. Its soft munching seems to reassure everyone: if the goat can eat here, perhaps the place is truly safe. As dusk approaches, the ash storm regains strength, sending a fine veil of dust ascending upon the terrace. You crouch beside the goat and stroke its coarse coat, whispering, "Stay vigilant." The goat's ears flick, nodding in the same steady rhythm that you've learned to trust. You glance at the cat, which has moved to perch atop a sturdy stone, eyes fixed on shifting ash patterns. You know that these animals sense tremors and changes in the wind long before humans can, and their quiet presence bolsters your confidence. Turning back to the group, you stand and lift your voice. In gentle instruction, we will share watches through the night. Each watch lasts 2 hours. When your time comes, remain with the fire to tend the embers and watch the ridge lines. If you see ash moving or feel the earth tremble, rouse the others. We will move swiftly to the next grove or alcove. You pause, letting your words sink in. The mother brushes ash from her hair, nodding. The elderly woman grips her staff and lifts a weary smile. Kairos leans over to adjust his sister's blanket eyes, determined. You assign the first watch to Callias and the shepherd, who will alternate keeping the fire alive and scanning for tremors. You give Kairos the goat's tether, entrusting him to watch for the animal's restlessness. You tell the mother to sleep beside her child, but to rouse immediately if the baby cries, as it may signal increased tremors. To the elderly woman, you offer a position near the terrace's edge, where her practiced ears can discern distant rumbles. Each person settles into their assigned role, relieved by the sense of shared purpose. At last, you step aside and lower yourself to the ground, leaning your back against the cool trunk of an olive tree. You draw a deep breath through the layers of cloth and close your eyes for a moment. The fire's glow bathes your cheeks, and the goat's steady breathing reminds you that you too deserve rest. Still, you know you cannot sleep, at least not yet. Vigilance is your duty. You watch the flames, coals glowing like embers of hope in an ashen world. Each flicker seems to whisper, endure. Protect, lead. The goat shifts its hooves, rustling dry leaves. The cat tilts its head, sensing movement in the dark beyond. You grip your staff's worn shaft, prepared to rise at the slightest sign of danger. As night deepens, the ash storm's light percussion grows softer, lulling even the youngest into a fitful slumber. The fire crackles, and you count each tooth of the flame as it dances upward. You keep your gaze fixed on the ridgeline where shadows loom like sentinel giants. In this moment, tending wounds, sharing warmth, and staying alert, you understand that survival depends not on grand actions, but on these small, steadfast choices. Cleaning a wound, offering a barley cake, stoking a humble fire, and listening for the earth's whispers. Each act is a stitch in the tapestry of survival binding you, Keros, the children elders, and even goat and cat into a single circle of hope amid the ashen darkness. Tonight, you guard this fragile hearth and its human and animal hearts, ensuring that when dawn breaks, if it even pierces the ash, every one of you remains ready to follow the path forward together. Seek shelter, avoid collapsed homes. You rise before the pale light of dawn, fully filters through the ashen haze, the hush of yesterday's tremors still lingering in your bones. Beneath the grove's scant canopy, ash drifts like slow snowflakes, but the olive and fig trees offer slender protection. You stretch, wincing at the lingering ache in your calves and the dull throb of your shin where you cleaned the cut. Carefully, you knot your linen mask and pull your cloak tighter, the heavy wool pressing reassuringly against your chest. Today, your priority is finding a more permanent shelter, some place where the villagers can rest without fear of walls collapsing or ashfall burying them alive. You scan the higher terraces, noting the twisted olive trunks and partially charred fig limbs. Beyond lies a sloping field of broken stone terraces that once held crops. Now each terrace stands cut by jagged fissures, jagged evidence of the earth's recent fury. Though these ruins breathe the memory of life, they also hold danger-weakened walls, ready to crumble under the slightest tremor or added weight. You take a slow breath, tasting the sharp tang of ash on your tongue, and steel your resolve. You gather the goat and the cat close. The goat's gentle bleat echoes in the hush. Its instincts have guided you well so far. The cat nudges your leg whiskers, twitching its eyes, bright with quiet intelligence. Guiding them beside you, you descend from the grove staff, tapping each footfall to test the stability of the ground. A tremor beneath your sandal vigil foot sends a ripple through the nearby stones, and you step back just in time as a small chunk of ash-laden rock crumbles. You nod to the goat, acknowledging its vigilance, and continue downward, sending the villagers ahead at a careful, measured pace. As you approach the second terrace below, you see the skeletal framework of what was once a sturdy stone dwelling. The walls are fractured huge limestone blocks, half buried in ash, so you decide to steer clear. Any attempt to squeeze inside could mean entrapment if the remaining masonry gives way. Instead, you look for a smaller alcove or natural overhang. Off to your left, beneath a broken stone wall, you spot a shallow recess, a ledge where the earth and stone have fused to form a partial cave high enough to keep most ash out, and low enough to avoid collapse. You kneel before the entrance and press a hand against the cool rock. It feels solid, damp with an unseen spring that likely seeps through the hillside. The goat steps beside you, sniffing the opening, and the cat pads just ahead, tail twitching. You shine your torch into the recess, revealing a small chamber just big enough for the villagers to huddle together. Though cramped, it is far safer than the fractured dwellings above. You test the chamber's entrance by leaning your weight against the overhang. It holds firm, and you lift a small rock, listening for any hollow echoes that might betray a deeper instability. No ominous clatter answers. Instead, there is only the faint drip of water. With a nod to the goat, you guide the villagers one by one into the alcove. "Stay close," you murmur, voice hushed. "Keep your backs against the wall. We will share this small space until we find something larger." The elderly woman hobbles in first, gripping your staff as though it were a lifeline. Beside her, Caro steps carefully, offering his sister a steady hand. The mother follows, cradling her baby, close each breath the child draws, filtered through soft cloth so the ash cannot choke tiny lungs. Inside the chamber's ceiling is low, forcing you all to sit in a semicircle, knees drawn up. The goat and cat settle on a narrow ledge at the back, their bodies pressed together for warmth. The air here is colder, danker, but the walls protect you from the worst of the ashfall. You unsling a jar of water from your belt, handing it to the mother, who gratefully offers a sip to her baby. Nearby, you pass cups to the others. Each receives a careful draught before you tuck the jar in a corner. A handful of barley cakes follow you, break them into small pieces, and distribute them, ensuring each survivor takes only enough to stave off hunger for another half day. The goat nibbles at a stray barley kernel. You hold out its gentle munch, a reminder that even in calamity, life's simplest comforts can endure. As the villagers settle, you rise and use your torch to survey the rocky alcove. Water drips from a fissure above, crisp and clear despite the ashen air. You cup a hand beneath the drip, savoring the chill on your tongue. You scoop a few spoonfuls into a small hollow in the stone, letting them pool. Drink when you need, you whisper to the group, gesturing to the water. You press a finger against the stone pool, feeling a flicker of warmth at the lambent reflection of the torch. Turning away from the pool, you examine the alcove's walls. Small cracks run along the limestone's face-tan lines against the gray stone. You trace your staff along each fissure, listening for any hollow thud that might signal an unstable pocket. Most walls are solid. A few have thin cracks, but none that grow darker, with running moisture indicating imminent collapse. As you work, the goat nudges your ankle and bleats softly. You think it senses your scrutiny, urging you to hurry. With a nod, you make your plan. We will clear away loose stones and ash at the entrance, you say, voice steady. Then we'll build a small barricade from the broken slabs, just enough to catch drifting ash and slow the chill wind. You step outside the goat, following, while the villagers remain inside the alcove's relative safety. In the crisp morning, the ash drizzles down, falling like gray petals. You lift a weathered slab of limestone, heavy and cumbersome, and wedge it near the entrance. Each block you place builds a shorter wall against the entrance, blocking ash and offering a semblance of defense. The staff you wield as a lever shifts tiny slabs into place. 10 minutes later, you step back and assess your works. A low barrier of stones curves around the alcove's mouth, creating a partial vestibule that promises easier breathing within. You nod with satisfaction. The goat nudges at a small gap between two stones, a breach you mend with a handful of ash-damp clumps, packed tightly to fill the void. Though it feels counterintuitive to use ash itself, you know that when mixed with damp stone and clay, it forms a temporary plug. With each clump, you pat the mixture into place, and your staff's tip smooths its surface. You return to the villagers' determination settling in your chest. They peer out through the newly formed barrier eyes, reflecting hope at the promise of relative safety. The mother holds her baby close, and the older siblings huddle beneath their shared blanket. The goat stands on a ledge, eyes scanning the ash-dappled hillside, while the cat curls in a small corner, content against the chill. You instruct them to rest, though your mind spins with next steps. Stay here, you say. The alcove drains most ash, and the barrier will catch falling dust. We have water and barley. At midday, when the ashfall lessens, I will scout for provisions, dried fruits, or herbs that grew on these terraces. But until then, remain together. If the ground shakes, huddle here and wait for the tremor to end. Do not exit until I return. Each person nods gratitude and trust shining through their dust-streaked faces. Once the villagers settle, you step outside again, torch in hand, and take a final look at the alcove's protective wall. The sky, filtered by thick ash, casts an eerie sepia glow over the terraces. You turn toward the goat and cat, your silent companions, and murmur, "Stay vigilant." The goat's head lowers to nibble a patched tuft of grass clinging between stones, while the cat slinks past you toward distant shadows, eyes gleaming as it scouts for movement. Your next task is clear to forage in the upper terraces for any salvageable edibles. But before you leave, you close your eyes and press your palms to the barrier's rough stones. Inhale. Exhale. Each breath, though still tinged with ash, feels lighter inside the alcove you secured. You recall the goat's soft bleat and the cat's reassuring purr, reminders that you are not alone. With one last glance at the safe shelter you fashioned, you step into the ash-laced morning. Each footstep away from the alcove is measured and wary beneath the ash-hidden pits or molten shards may lurk. Yet, you walk resolutely, staff tapping to test each patch of ground. You know that finding even meager provisions, olive leaves, small figs, or hidden water pockets, can mean another day's survival. As you ascend the terrace toward a jagged ridge, you reflect that shelter need not be grand to save lives. This small alcove, carved into the hillside and reinforced with battered stones, embodies hope. Though it will not withstand every tremor forever, it offers a momentary haven and anchor against a world turned to dust. Below the villagers rest their soft breaths, mingling like silent prayers. Above, your heart beats in time with each careful step, each guided by the goat's sure instincts and the cat's keen vigilance. As you take your leave, you offer a silent vow you will return with whatever nourishment you can find, and each of you, animal and human alike, will endure together in this fragile cradle of stone and ash. Grieve, reflect, and find hope in community. You sit against the rough stone wall of the alcove, the goat beside you, softly chewing stray barley, and the cat, curled in your lap, purring, as though to remind you that life persists even now. The air in this small chamber is cool and slightly damp, a gentle relief from the ashen wind that continues to swirl just beyond the stone barrier. You draw your knees to your chest, head bowed, and feel the weight of grief settle across your shoulders, as thick and heavy as the ash that blankets the world outside. Your thoughts drift to the village you left behind. You imagine the clay-walled homes now half buried beneath gray drifts, the narrow alleys once alive with laughter and barter, now silent. You recall the faces of friends, the baker who always greeted you with a crust of warm bread, the shepherd whose flock you tended beside the cypress groves, the children who chased goats along the dusty paths. Each memory sparkles and then dims like firelight fading under ash. A slow ache blooms in your chest, grief for what was lost and for the uncertain future that lies ahead. As you exhale, you feel the gust of trapped heat from the goat's body, and the cat's purr vibrates through your thigh, unifying you with two creatures who have endured alongside you. You press a hand gently to the goat's flank, whispering, "We mourn what was, but we must also embrace what remains." The goat nuzzles your palm, and you recognize in its quiet presence the first ember of hope. That community extends beyond your memories and into this moment of shared survival. You rise and step outside the alcove, staff tapping on the ash-laden ground as you move toward a sunken terrace where the survivors tend the small barley patches and sip water from the alcove's trickling pool. Keros sits beside his sister near a blackened olive sapling that clings to life leaves, mottled but still green at the edges. The mother gently rocks her baby, humming a soft lullaby, an echo of songs that once carried for miles across rolling fields. The elderly woman sits close by, hands clasped around the small torch that remains lit, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and strength. You kneel beside Keros. "We have lost much," you say quietly, "but we also have each other." He looks up at you, nodding in solemn agreement. His sister raises her small hand, wiping ash from her cheek, and offers you a faint, brave smile. In that fragile expression, you recognize that although the world has been torn apart, the bonds of shared hardship can rekindle compassion and care. The survivors gather in a loose circle, and you guide them to sit beneath the alcove's partial overhang. The goat settles at the group's edge, chewing at an ashen clump of grass, while the cat curls near the elderly woman's feet, head resting on her lap. You take a breath and address the group. "This place, though battered, is our sanctuary for now. We grieve what has been taken from us, homes, fields, familiar skies. But we are still here together. Your voice echoes softly against the basalt walls, and for a moment, a hush falls as each person allows themselves to feel the full weight of loss. The mother eyes red-rimmed speaks first. My home lies beneath ash, she murmurs, voice trembling. I had olives, figs, barley. Now I have only my child. Her words hang like fragile threads, but instead of breaking, they draw the group closer. The elderly woman reaches out and places a hand on the mother's shoulder. You still have her, she says gently, and we still have each other. We will rebuild in small ways. A young man with soot-streaked hair leans forward, gaze fixed on the crumbling terraces. I lost my father in the tremor, he says, throat constricting. He was helping to herd goats. He never made it to safety. Silence washes over the circle, heavy and reverent. You kneel and place a hand on his arm. He watched over the herd until the end, you whisper. His courage guided you, and his spirit lives on in this goat that stands with us. The goat lifts its head, bleats softly, and you feel tears prick your own lashes. You stand and walk slowly to the alcove's entrance, using your staff to steady each step. You glance at the sky, a heavy sheet of ash waiting above, but beyond it, you sense a pale glimmer sunlight striving to penetrate the gloom. You inhale the damp, pine-scented air that trickles into the alcove from higher terraces, reminding you that nature endures even when ravaged. Returning to the circle, you draw each survivor into a gentle embrace, offering the comfort of touch, a hand on a back, an arm around a shoulder, a nod of shared recognition that grief can be lightened when borne together. The mother rests her head on the elderly woman's shoulder. The siblings clasp hands. The young man places a hand on the goat's neck, tears sliding down his ash-streaked face. You raise your staff, tapping it lightly on the ground to gain everyone's attention. Today, we mourn, you say, voice steady but soft. We let our tears flow for all we lost. But tomorrow, when dawn is bright, or as bright as it can be under this ash, we will honor their memory by forging a new path. We will share our skills, gathering olives, tending goats, searching for hidden water, and learning from this land what remains possible. Each survivor meets your gaze, some nodding slowly, the first sparks of agreement glinting in their eyes. The cat, sensing the shift, leaps onto a basalt block at the circle's edge and looks over the group with bright, attentive eyes. You smile and say, even the smallest creature here reminds us life finds a way if we stand united. The survivors murmur a gentle chorus of approval as the goat stands and circles the group, nuzzling each person in turn. The goat's quiet presence fosters comfort, as though reminding everyone that community extends beyond human bonds. The mother lifts her baby, offering a tender smile. When she grows, she whispers, I will tell her of our village of buried homes of olive groves, and the goat who guided us to safety. The baby gurgles, tiny fists clenching, as though responding to the promise of future stories. You feel the ache in your heart ease slightly. Hope finds its first roots in that mother's vow. The elderly woman prints a line of ash into the dirt with her staff, then points to each survivor as she speaks. We must also remember the land, for it will heal if we care for it. In time, these terraces will bear fruit again if we nurture them together. You nod, envisioning a future where olives, figs, and barley once more ripen under kinder skies, where children dance among the olive trees rather than flee from ash. A gentle tremor shakes the ground, a reminder that Thera's fury still simmers. You steady yourself and scan the horizon, but the survivors remain calm, grounded by the shared understanding that no matter what the earth does, you face it as a united band. The goat stands sentinel at the alcove's mouth, and the cat curls against the young man's boot, purring encouragement. You step to the center of the group, raising your staff like a beacon. Let us share our dreams, you say. What do you hope to find beyond this ash? What seeds can we plant in our hearts even now? The young man speaks first, voice steady. I dream of rebuilding our terraces, of teaching my sister to tend goats of laughter instead of silence. A murmur of agreement ripples through the circle. The mother adds, I dream of singing. Again, songs of harvest and love. The elder murmurs, I dream of watching olives swell on branches. Each voice adds a brick to a new foundation, a promise that life, though altered, endures in shared dreams. Above, a faint glow spreads behind the ashen veil, as if the sun itself acknowledges your pact. You lift your staff, and the goat bleats in firm agreement, while the cat's tail twitches in quiet affirmation. In that moment, the weight of loss seems less crushing. The alcove's stone walls, though silent, hold witness to your community's first flicker of hope. You close your eyes and exhale, letting the collective hope fill you. Hope, forged in shared grief, tempered by hard-won wisdom, and bound together by commitment to each other. This is the refuge that endures, a refuge of hearts intertwined, where the semblance of family thrives even amid the ash. As the ash continues to drift down like soft gray snow, you and the survivors remain huddled together, eyes lifted toward that distant glow. And within the hush of shared loss, a quiet ember of future possibility flickers a promise that one day these broken terraces will bloom again under kinder skies, sustained by the communal spirit you now share. Keep watch through the ash-clouded night. Night drapes the terraces in near-total darkness, the faint glow from Thera's ash-laden sky casting an eerie, sepia-tinged hue over the broken landscape. You lie, curled beneath the low overhang of the alcove, warmth from the small fire-fading embers glowing dimly like scattered stars. The goat rests on its haunches. At the entrance, alert hoofbeats tapping softly against the stone whenever tremors whisper through the earth. The cat perches on a ledge, above tail, flicking ears swiveling at the faintest rustle of wind-borne ash. Through your layered mask, each breath tastes of soot and pine, a reminder that vigilance tonight is as precious as water and food. You settle your staff to one side and press a hand against the cool basalt wall. Its rough surface feels like a touchstone to reality amid this drifting gray chaos. You close your eyes briefly, letting your mind catalog the day's grief, the rival presences of sorrow and fleeting hope. Though heavy eyelids beg for rest, you know that your role as guardian requires you to remain awake, at least until the first watches conclude. The survivors, Keros and his sister, huddled beneath a woolen wrap, the elderly woman leaning against a stone pillar. The mother clasping her child, breathe in quiet unison, trusting that you will safeguard them until dawn. A gentle tremor ripples through the alcove, rattling a few loose stones and sending a thin plume of ash drifting in through the barrier. You inhale sharply, the hiss of breath through cloth echoing in the hush. The goat's ears flick upward, and it lets out a low bleat, a signal you've come to recognize as an early warning. You push yourself up on one elbow and peer through the alcove's mouth. Outside, a fringe of ash dances in the pale glow, and distant silhouettes of collapsed terraces loom like specters. With practiced calm, you rise and cross to the fire. The embers smolder in a rocky pit, sending wisps of smoke upward into the cavern's shadowed heights. You gather a few small twigs, scant offerings from the lone olive tree at the terrace's edge, and gently stoke the embers. A faint flicker of flame bursts to life, casting long, jittering shadows on the walls. You draw the goat's tether close, speaking softly. Stay vigilant. The goat bleats again, nostrils flaring as it sniffs the chilled night air. The cat, as if understanding the urgency, leaps down from its ledge and pads forward, head lowered to scent the ground for hidden movements. You glance back at the survivors, whose eyes remain closed in what passes for slumber. Keros' sister shifts unwaking murmurs escaping her throat. You brush your fingers through Keros' hair, offering silent reassurance before straightening. A tiny tremor passes, and you tighten your grip on the staff. You will remain here, protect these lives, until the night's shadow yields to dawn, or until a tremor demands immediate action. Footsteps outside catch your ear, soft, hesitant. You raise your staff and readiness cloak swirling around your ankles as you step toward the entrance. The goat's silhouette stands at the barrier form, rigid, sensing threat beyond its fenced path. A figure emerges, Callias, his face nearly obscured by ash-laden cloth movements, deliberate. He carries a small bowl of water and a handful of dried figs, offering them to you with a nod. You accept, whispering thank you. He slips into the alcove and kneels beside the embers, muttering, "I kept watch until the tremors ceased." You give a brief nod of appreciation, knowing that your shared duties ground this fragile community in mutual trust. You place the bowl of water near the edge of the embers, noting how the liquid surface catches the dancing flames. Each ripple reminds you of the sea's roar you escaped, now distant, yet ever present in your memories. Callias hands you a dried fig, and you break it open slowly, offering half to him, before taking a bite. Its faint sweetness lingers a comfort amid ash and uncertainty. He settles by the goat, stroking its muzzle, as though thanking the animal for its unwavering vigilance. As Callias takes your place for now, you step deeper into the alcove's shadows, scanning the walls for cracks or signs of instability. Small pebbles shift as a tremor quivers through the ground. You raise a hand to finger a fissure, its hairline and dry, no immediate threat. You step back to the survivor's voice, low, all is calm for now, but remain ready. You place a damp cloth against the elderly woman's forehead, letting the cool moisture ease the tension that ripples beneath her furrowed brow. She offers a half smile and closes her eyes, trusting you to guard her against nightmares of falling ash and broken homes. At the alcove's mouth, the cat appears and brushes past your ankles. You crouch to stroke its back, feeling the purr resonate through its ribcage. "Watch the slope," you whisper, glancing outward. In the dim light, you can just make out shifting shadows where loose stones record the tremor's rhythm. The goat stands sentinel beside the cat ears, swiveling to catch the slightest rumble. Together, they form a living shield against the ashen gloom. You return to Keros, who sits huddled beneath a tattered blanket. His eyes, partially closed, still flick with light. You gently touch his shoulder. "Rest, but be ready." He nods, adjusting his sister's head on his knee. The mother baby, cradled to her chest, breathes softly, the cloth mask muffling each inhale. The elderly woman, wrapped in her shawl, lies back against the basalt, hands folded neatly. In this circle of weary souls, sleep is but a fleeting luxury. Yet it is necessary to face what morning may bring. You step outside, careful to keep the torch low so as not to draw attention. The terrace's slope glistens with ash that is coalesced into damp film by the night's chill. You raise your staff, tapping a rhythm on the terraces to test stability. Loose stones give way, and you pause to avoid sliding. A low howl of wind carries ash like ocean spray across the terraces. Your cloak whips against your legs, and you press into the slope, scanning beyond the alcove's small barrier. Far below in the darkness, faint ripples of moonlight reflect on what is now a shadowed plain of ash. Without waves visible, you rely on your memory of the coast contours to know that any sudden surge would thunder unseen into this valley. Yet, now the sea's roar is a distant murmur. You focus instead on sheltered pockets of stability, narrow terraces carved by farmers long gone. Your staff taps twice on a smooth slab, then thrice on a gravel patch, listening for changes. No ominous sounds follow, and you interpret it as a promise that the ground here holds at least until the next tremor. A cool gust of wind carries a fresh plume of ash across your face, stinging through the cloth. You draw back, tightening your hood. The goat emits a soft bleat, and the cat's ears flatten. You whisper steady, then you hear a faint distant rustle, a small rock tumbling on a farther ledge, its sound quick and sharp. You tilt your head, listening for its source. Perhaps a larger section of unstable terrace has begun to shift. You straighten your posture and decide to reinforce the alcove barrier once more before dawn. Returning inside, you find Callias hunched by the fire pit, eyes heavy but watchful. The embers glow faintly, sending flickers of light across soot-streaked faces. You nod and reach for the goat's tether, gently leading the animal forward. With each packstone you carried earlier, you place another slab against the barrier's eastern flank, fortifying the alcove against drifts that might funnel through gaps. The goat stands still beside you, its breath warm on your hand as you work. It shifts to nuzzle a barrier stone, as though approving your efforts. The cat darts past your ankles, skirting the barrier's edge and pausing to sniff at a crack where ash flows too freely. You use a small lump of damp ash to plug it, pressing it tight with your staff's tip. By the time Callias relieves you, the barrier stands 2 layers thick, a low stone wall reinforced with clumps of ash-clay mixture. It should withstand the worst of the night's wind, though you know no shelter is impervious to nature's wrath. You gratefully sink into the pitted floor's dust, passing the staff to Callias. He nods and returns to his position by the embers, ready to tend the flame and alert you should tremors return. You slip toward the alcove's center, careful to avoid waking the fragile ties of sleep. The survivors lie clustered, Keros' sister curled against him, the mother cradling her infant, the elderly woman anchored against the back wall. You kneel and brush ash from Keros' forehead, murmuring, "Tomorrow we find food. Rest now." His eyes flicker open, but he nods before releasing himself to slumber once more. You cast one last glance at the goat and cat, stalwart guardians of this tiny refuge. The goat's breathing steadies, and the cat's tail curls around its paws as it settles. You step back and close your eyes, letting exhaustion pull you toward sleep's edge. Each inhalation is still heavy with ash, but within the spacious dark of the alcove, the filtered breaths feel almost soothing. Moments stretch into a silent vigil. Your mind drifts, imagining the terraces as they once were, sunlit groves of olive and fig goats grazing among ripening barley, laughter echoing through the village lanes. Grief lingers, but through it, you sense the flicker of tomorrow's promise, a seed planted in shared resolve. A sharp tremor jolts through the alcove, rattling stones loose and sending a whisper of ash swirling around you. You bolt upright, heart-hammering cloak whipping around your legs. The goat rises to its hooves, eyes wide, and the cat hisses, fur bristling. You seize your staff and step outside, heart attuned to every sound. The horizon's faint glow casts shadows that dance across the terraces, revealing displaced stones and thin cracks spreading across the slope. You stand firm. Guardianship demands action. Still, the tremor fades as quickly as it came, and the eruption's distant thunder resumes a subdued plateau. You draw a steadying breath, pressing a hand against your pounding chest. The goat lowers its head, trusting your resolve to guide it. The cat pads back inside, signaling that this moment of alarm has passed. You return to Callias at the embers, who nods without speaking, his vigilant expression mirroring your own determination. As the night stretches onward, you let your eyelids droop in fitful rest, each slumbering breath tinged with ash, but bolstered by solidarity. The goat stands guard at the threshold, and the cat sleeps curled in Keros' lap. You lie back, staff within arm's reach, knowing that when dawn breaks, or if another tremor calls you, you will rise to lead this resilient band through the ashen darkness toward the uncertain light. Dawn's decision, charting the path forward. You nudge your half-closed eyes awake to a faint, sepia-tinged glow filtering through the ash-laden sky. The embers of the little fire stutter in the alcove, and the goat stands sentinel at the entrance, its ears swiveling in silent vigilance. The cat, stretched out atop a flat stone, opens one eye and blinks sleepily before rising to circle the edge of the shelter. Each breath you draw through layers of cloth tastes of soot and wet pine, a reminder of how precarious each inhale has become. But now, with dawn's brittle light, you know it is time to make your next move. You rise, pushing aside loose ash that has drifted onto the alcove's stone floor overnight. Your shin's bandage creaks as you flex your leg. Pain stabs briefly, but you grit your teeth and press onward. Outside, the terrace is bathed in a dim, ghostly luminescence. Ash drifts downward, like slow-motion rain, settling on everything in sight. Broken terraces, gnarled olive trunks, and the survivors huddled together beneath your makeshift barrier. You take a steadying breath, pressing fingertips to the cool stone wall. This place has sheltered you through tremors and torrents of ash. But now, its role shifts. It must serve as the launch point for your journey toward safer ground. You gather the survivors in a small semicircle just inside the alcove's mouth. Keros and his sister, the mother, cradling her baby, the elderly woman leaning on her staff, Callias, nursing one last swig of water. The goat nudges Keros's leg, and the cat weaves between their ankles, urging everyone to focus on the present moment. Dawn has come, you whisper, voice hushed, but unwavering. The ashfall will ease soon. We must leave this alcove and find a safer refuge farther from the mountain slopes. The terraces below are unstable, and hidden vents may still pour molten rock. Ahead lies a pocket of woodlands at the ridge's base. If we can reach them, we may find clean water and more substantial shelter. You scan their eyes, gauging each person's readiness. The mother loosens the cloth wrapped around her baby's face, letting the child breathe slightly easier. Keros straightens his back and nods firmly when your gaze meets his. His sister shifts, wincing, when pressure touches her bandaged ankle, but she looks determined. The elderly woman grips her staff, bony knuckles white, and offers a soft nod. Callias stands at your side, staff in hand, prepared to lead any who stumble. The goat bleats a clear affirmation, while the cat perches on a nearby rocktail, twitching as though mapping an invisible route. You begin by distributing your remaining supplies, a few barley cakes, dried figs, and the last of the goat's feed. You break each barley cake into small pieces, ensuring each survivor can take only enough to stave off hunger until you find new provisions. The goat nuzzles Keros's hand as you set a small bowl of water at the alcove's entrance, its surface still clear despite the whisper of ash drifting in. You instruct the mother to keep the baby's cloth lightly dusted with damp moss, just enough to filter what remains of the falling ash without smothering the child. You knot your linen mask tight and draw your hood low, each movement a careful choreography to ensure ash stays outside. You ascend from the alcove, first staff tapping on the brittle layer of ash that covers the terrace. The goat and cat follow closely, and you turn to beckon the others forward. One by one they rise, leaning on staffs, and each other trusting your lead. The path ahead slopes downward, the terraces cut into a jagged staircase of stone, each step treacherous underfoot. You move deliberately to ensure no one trips. A sudden tremor ripples through the ridge, loose stones shift, and a small cascade of ash flows from above. You hold up a hand, signaling a pause, and guide the goat to stand sentinel at the next stable rock. You tap the ground with your staff, listening for vibrations that might signal hidden cavities or molten undercurrents. At last, the tremor subsides. You exhale and motion for the survivors to follow. Ahead, the terrace narrows, flanked by walls of blackened olive roots and upturned earth where vines once clung. The ashen wind picks up, swirling in eddies that obscure vision. You press on, mindful of each step. The cat's eyes gleam in the dim light as it leads the way when your mask-clad breaths chastise each inhale with grit. As you traverse the terrace, Keros steadies his sister's elbow, guiding her across each unstable ledge. The elderly woman moves slowly, her staff carving deliberate arcs on the ground to test for soft spots. The goat nuzzles her arm, a wordless promise of protection. The mother clutches her baby close, her eyes burning with resilience as she steadies her feet on the ashen stones. Below you glimpse the wide swath of ash-choked plains, the remnants of terraces where wheat and olives once thrived. Now only blackened stumps and collapsed stone walls remain. Beyond that lies the blocked valley, and you recall that your father's old maps described a path through that valley, leading to a dense stand of pines at the base of the ridge, a place rumored to harbor an underground spring. If your memory serves, that spring might still flow sheltered by layers of rock. Your task guide the survivors to that narrow path that descends through the valley floor. After what feels like hours, the terrace slopes down to a shallow gully. The goat ducks its head to nibble a clump of ashen grass, a silent reassurance that life springs from even the bleakest soil. You beckon the survivors to follow and begin the descent. Each step down is a test. The ground beneath shifts treacherously, and occasional vents sear faint plumes of heat that tickle your nostrils. You lead with your staff ahead, tapping and probing. A hidden pocket of steam hisses beneath a thin crust. You jerk back and shift the group's path to avoid any risk of falling into scalding fissures. Keros's sister struggles as the slope grows steeper. Her ankle throbs despite the bandage. You wrap your arm around her waist and guide her down, slowly, careful to land each foot on stones tested by your staff. The goat steps sure-footed ahead, sniffing each patch to gauge solidity, while the cat perches on a rock to survey every crevice. At the valley floor's edge, you find a narrow path, hemmed in by shattered columns and collapsed beams, once part of a stone dwelling, now a feeble marker of civilization. This path snakes between terraces, leading away from the shore. You recall that it slopes gradually, guarded by a low ridge to the west that will shield you from winds stirring further ash closer to Thera. You motion for everyone to keep low, hugging the slope's western wall as you proceed. The mother stumbles over loose stones, baby stirring in her arms. You place a firm hand on her shoulder and steady her. "Stay close," you murmur. "We move as one." She nods, tears glinting in her eyes, yet she straightens her back, resolve etched on her face. The elderly woman leans heavily on you when the path narrows, her steps, deliberate, and measured, each guided by the staff's probing. The goat and cat flank the group, their presence a comforting rhythm amid the roar of your own heartbeat. After what seems like an eternity, the path bends westward and opens onto a small copse of windswept pines. Their silhouettes are skeletal needles, blackened trunks scarred by ash, but beneath them lies a patch of softer ground filtered by needles and sheltered from the worst of the falling dust. The slope undulates gently here, and you notice steam rising from a small fissure in the rocky soil, evidence of a hidden spring. Relief surges through you. You guide the survivors toward the pines, where the goat lowers itself to graze on a handful of hardy shrubs, and the cat darts ahead to investigate the spring. You kneel at the fissure, pressing a cupped hand into the trickling flow, clear, cool water that tastes like salvation. You signal the survivors to follow, and one by one they kneel to drink. The mother gives her baby a sip, warming the child's lips with gentleness. Caro scoops water into his palms and splashes it on his sister's face, the moisture washing away ash and fatigue. The elderly woman drinks slowly, eyes closed, as though rediscovering a lost paradise. You rise and survey the pines. Beneath them, the ground is softer scattered, with a thin layer of ash pillow and pine needles. You decide this is where you'll make camp for the day, an improvised refuge, shielded from the worst of the ashfall with water at hand and a modicum of shade to guard against the lingering heat of Thera's fury. You instruct Callias to gather fallen pine branches sturdy enough to build a small lean-to and create a barrier against drifting ash. Karos and his sister collect tufts of moss and strips of bark that you can bundle into makeshift bedding. The mother and elderly woman begin arranging stones around the spring, channeling its flow into a shallow basin for easier access. The goat remains close by, nibbling at resilient shrubs, and the cat stalks small insects disturbed by your arrival. You take a moment to sit beneath the pines, letting the filtered light warm your cheeks. Each inhalation through your mask feels slightly easier here, less ash and more faint pine scent. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, savoring that brief reprieve. When you open them, you see the survivors working together, tending the spring, gathering wood and weaving pine boughs into a makeshift shelter. In their movements, you witness the quiet formation of a new community, united by shared hardship and mutual care. As midday approaches, the ashfall thins to a sparse drizzle. You stand and reach for your staff, using it to clear a small area beneath the pines. You break a few barley cakes and distribute them to the survivors, each bite met with eager gratitude. You lead them one by one to the spring for a deeper drink, teaching them how to filter the water through cloth to catch any lingering ash. With basic needs met, water, food, shelter, you gather everyone around and issue your next instructions. This stand of pines will keep us safe for now, you say, but we cannot remain here forever. We must move west by tomorrow, following the ridge towards the foothills. I will scout further once the ashfall ceases entirely. We will find abandoned fields or perhaps other survivors who can help us rebuild. The mother, clutching her baby close, nods. Karos's sister presses her cheek to the cat's fur eyes, bright with renewed strength. The elderly woman leans heavily on her staff but stands tall, offering a gentle nod. The goat bleats softly, an affirmation that echoes through the grove. You scrawl a quick notch in the bark of a pine, an old habit your father taught you when marking paths. Beneath it, you press your palm and murmur a vow: survival through solidarity, one step at a time. The goat steps forward and places a soft hoof beside your hand, as though sealing the promise. As the survivors settle beneath the pines, some resting under pine boughs, others drawing water from the spring, you stand watch at the camp's edge. The sky above remains an expanse of drifting ash, but here on this ridge, among these bent trunks and scattered stones, you sense a fragile peace. You know the road ahead will be fraught with challenges: treacherous terrain, scarce provisions, and constant vigilance. But together, guided by shared hope and the instincts of your four-legged companions, you will chart the path forward. Tonight, when the ash begins to fall again, you will gather around the lean-to's small hearth and tend the embers. You will share stories of what once was and dreams of what will be. You will grieve and hope in equal measure, and at dawn you will rise again, every breath a testament to resilience, every step an affirmation that life, though battered, endures. For now, though, you allow yourself a single moment to sit beneath the pines, listening to the goat's gentle chewing and the cat's soft purr. You close your eyes, feeling the faint warmth of filtered light on your face, and know that this too is part of the journey, learning to find refuge and forge community amid the ashes of a shattered world. Navigate the hidden valley, trusting paths unseen. You awake before dawn once more, the ash-darkened sky hinting at a pale glow beyond the horizon. The pine-scented air here feels faintly cleaner, but you know the comfort is temporary. Each breath still carries a whisper of soot, and your lungs burn with every draw. You rise, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and tug your layered mask into place. The survivors stir beneath the pine-bough lean-to. Kairos yawns, brushing ash from his sister's hair. The mother cradles her baby, whose soft breaths punctuate the morning hush. The elderly woman leans on her staff, gazing toward the valley floor. Callias kneels beside a small pool where water from last evening's spring remains clear. The goat and cat, united in vigil, stand at the camp's edge, ears and whiskers twitching at each subtle sound. You draw your staff close and step out onto the ash-softened earth. Though the terraces below felt treacherous in yesterday's gray, the valley beyond holds secrets you must uncover. You lean on your staff, scanning the ridgeline for a narrow path that descends between broken columns and half-buried orchards. In your memory, the maps your father once studied traced a faint trail through this valley, one that weaves between collapsed terraces and hidden springs, ultimately leading to safer, lower ground. If you follow that path correctly, you may find abandoned crops or sheltered hollows that yield more substantial refuge. A tremor shudders through the ridge, and you steady yourself, placing a hand on a nearby pine trunk. Its bark is cool under your palm, a gentle anchor against the momentary quiver. You breathe deeply, tasting pine resin and ash, and remind yourself that every step now demands caution. The goat bleats softly, its keen instincts urging you to begin. You nod and turn toward the valley's edge. Beneath your boots, the ash gives way to brittle stones that cling to the slope, a precarious footing that challenges each step but offers the only route forward. Calling softly, you beckon Kairos and his sister, guiding them toward the descent. His sister's ankle throbs, but she grips your arm and follows. The mother rises, dusting ash from her child's cloak before hoisting her baby higher on her chest. The elderly woman tests each step with her staff before committing her weight. Callias standing close to offer a steadying hand if needed. The goat steps between them, hooves clicking against stone as it navigates the ledge, while the cat darts ahead, nose to the ground, sniffing out hidden dangers. Together you form an unbroken chain of trust, each one depending on the other's sure foot. As you descend the pine trees, thin, and give way to a stubbled slope of blackened terraces. On your right, a collapsed stone wall protrudes, marking the remnants of an olive grove. You recall that, before the eruption, vines draped these walls and trees bent under heavy fruit. Now, only ash-dusted stumps remain. But as you step closer, you notice tiny green buds clinging to a gnarled branch, an unexpected sign that life endures even here. You kneel and brush a gentle hand across the bud, marveling at its resilience. Hope, you murmur, rising to guide the survivors onward. At the valley floor, the trail narrows to a ribbon of cracked clay and ash bordered by the remnants of half-buried orchards. You press your staff's tip into the ground, listening. Beneath your finger, a faint vibration pulses, the distant echo of residual tremors. You glance at the goat, whose ears are pricked forward, and the cat, whose tail flicks in reassurance. You recognize that this path, though hidden by ash, still offers a lifeline. Beneath the cracked earth, water may flow, and fertile soil may lie waiting. You lead the group westward, each step a careful negotiation. Loose stones cascade behind you when you shift weight too quickly, and small clouds of ash rise to cloak your legs. Kero steadies his sister with a firm grip, while the mother navigates with measured steps, baby cushioned against her warmth. The elderly woman moves slowly, staff probing for hidden voids beneath the ash, trusting your guidance and the goat's sure instincts. Callias brings up the rear, scanning the horizon for signs of collapse or smoke that might signal new vents. Midway through the valley, the trail plunges into a narrow ravine where steam rises from the earth. The air here is warmer, tinged with moisture and the faint hiss of vented gases. You kneel and press your hand against the ground. Its heat radiates up, reminding you that Thera's fury still simmers below. With a steady breath, you extend your staff forward to test the ground's solidity. It holds firm, and you motion for the survivors to follow. You guide them across a natural stone bridge formed by cooled lava, its surface lumpy but solid. As you step onto the bridge, the goat slips momentarily on a slick patch where steam has moistened the rock. You seize its tether and guide it safely across, heart thundering at the thought of one misstep. The cat, nimble and light, darts ahead to scout the far edge, where you glimpse a shallow meadow of ash-sprinkled grass and the skeletal remains of a stone fountain, once a gathering place for travelers seeking fresh water. You remember tales from your father's maps that Fountain Spring still flows beneath the soil, a hidden vein of hope in this shattered land. You press onward to verify, kneeling beside the fountain's fractured basin. Beneath a thin crust of ash, you spot clear water pooling in a shallow depression carved by centuries of use. You cup your hand and lift the water to your lips, cool, clean, and vital. You signal to the survivors, and one by one they kneel to drink. The mother moistens her baby's lips, and Kero splashes water onto his sister's face, washing away last night's ash. The elderly woman lowers herself to the fountain's edge, trembling with relief as she savors each sip. The goat laps eagerly, and the cat splashes a paw in the shallow pool, then deftly drinks where your hands left a small moat. With renewed strength, you rise and look down the valley toward a ridge in the distance, its slopes crowned by a stand of hardy juniper and cypress. Your memory tells you that beyond that ridge lies a network of hidden caves where villagers once sought refuge during crop blights. If you can reach those caves, you may find more secure shelter, and perhaps even remnants of tools or provisions left behind. You breathe in the damp, pine-scented air from the fountain, tasting its clarity, and steel yourself for the next stretch of journey. You check each survivor's condition. Keros' sister's ankle is less swollen after the cool water. The mother's baby coos softly, eyelids fluttering. The elderly woman's knobby hands grip her staff with renewed vigor. Callias stands by, ready to assist with supplies or guidance. The goat, having drunk its fill, stands at the fountain's edge, whiskers flicking at lingering steam. The cat pads ahead, tail high, as though marking the course forward. Collectively, you form a resolute band, each step grounded in mutual care. You lead the ascent toward the distant ridge. The slope here is steeper, strewn with ashen stones that threaten to roll beneath your boots. You press your staff's tip into the ground, testing each footstep. A sudden gust of ash-driven wind lances across the valley, stinging eyes and drawing gasps beneath cloth. You cover your mask with a second layer of linen, knotting it tighter, and motion for the survivors to huddle behind a large boulder while the wind passes. The goat lowers its head against the gust, and the cat darts to shield itself behind a cluster of scrub. You wait, heart pounding, until the ash blizzard subsides, and then guide everyone onward. Higher and higher you climb each step, a testament to endurance. The goat navigates the best path, hooves sure on precarious ledges. You follow in its wake, careful never to lose sight of its silhouette against the ashen sky. The cat continues its vigilant patrol, pausing at every ledge to peer into the shadows below. As you approach the ridge's crest, the slope moderates and you see a grove of charred cypress, a sign that fire once swept here, but that these trees survived. Beneath them, the ground is softer, layered with needles that cushion your boots. You exhale, allowing the gentlest hint of relief to bloom in your chest. At the ridge's summit, the survivors gather to catch their breath. The goat stands atop a root-bound outcropping, head raised to sniff the horizon. The cat arches its back and lets out a quiet mew, its way of signaling you to look beyond. From this vantage point, you glimpse the entrance to a series of caves etched into the cliff face. Their mouths, black and yawning, promise shelter from ash wind and the lingering tremors below. You remember the old villagers' tales. These caves once sheltered travelers and herders, offering protection and space to store grain or graze small goats. Now perhaps they await your arrival. You lead the survivors down a gentler slope toward the caves, each step easier than those before. The mother grips her baby tighter, a soft smile tugging at her lips as her child coos in delight at the shifting light. The elderly woman moves with surprising grace for her age, leaning on her staff as she descends toward hope. Kairos and his sister share light words, shadows of laughter escaping between them as they step behind you. The goat and cat race ahead, eager to explore this new refuge. At the cave's entrance, you pause, scenting the air. It feels drier, with only a faint hint of ash drifting inside. You shine your torch into the largest mouth. The floor is smooth stone, the ceiling high enough to stand beneath. You test the earth with your staff, firm and unyielding. You wave the survivors forward, and they step inside, faces reflecting torchlight and cautious wonder. The mother places her baby on a rocky ledge far enough out of harm's way that the child can watch the flickering flames as you assess this space. You advance into the cave staff, tapping to send echoes across the chamber. At the far end, a smaller opening leads deeper into the hillside darkness beyond, but you sense cool air flowing from within. You follow, revealing an inner chamber where remnants of carved benches and niches hint at past use. Bowls once held water hooks, once held nets, and scratch marks on the walls show the passage of footsteps long gone. You guide the survivors into these deeper halls where the air is stiller, quieter, almost sacred. The goat steps onto a raised ledge, its presence commanding. The cat perches atop a stone shelf, eyes surveying the dark passageways. You instruct the survivors to gather in the innermost chamber. Kairos and his sister settle on stone benches. The mother cradles her baby in her arms. The elderly woman leans against a carved recess. Kalia stands at the doorway, staff ready to guard against loose stones or sudden tremors. You place the remaining barley cakes in a shallow niche, broken into small pieces for tomorrow's rations. You clear ash from the stone benches as best you can, creating small seats for each survivor, simple but precious comfort. The torches cast dancing shadows on the rough walls, illuminating ancient carvings that depict goats clambering among peaks and cats stalking small rodents. You smile, these creatures revered by those who built this place now guide you and your companions through peril. In a corner of the chamber, you find a small alcove that channels fresh air from a hidden fissure, breathable even when ash chokes the outside. You dip a cloth into the trickle of water that drips from above and pass it to each survivor, allowing them to breathe without the dense barrier of your masks for a few short, precious moments. The goat becomes calm under the gentle glow, chewing at a tuft of dried grass you found along the slope. The cat's purr resonates through the chamber, a comforting counterpoint to the distant rumble that still echoes from Thera. You place a hand on the goat's flank, whispering, "Thank you for guiding us." Its gentle eyes meet yours, and you sense its proud acceptance. You turn to the survivor's voice, soft but clear. "This cave will shelter us for now. Its walls stand firm against ash and tremor. Tonight, we share what little we have, and remember that this journey, though wrought with ash and fear, also brought us together. Tomorrow we will venture onward, guided by the goat and cat toward greener ground. But for now, rest. Breathe the cleaner air. Let the shadows of this chamber cradle you." As each survivor settles, some lying on stone benches, others leaning against carved walls, you step toward the cave's entrance to stand guard. Outside, a faint ash drizzle marks the world beyond, but within these stone walls, a fragile peace holds sway. The goat stands sentinel beside you, ears alert to every sound, and the cat curls at your feet, tail wrapped protectively around its paws. You draw a slow breath through the alcove's opening, feeling the cave's cool screen ward against ash and wind. In this moment of sanctuary, stones echoing soft purrs, steady bleats, and hushed breathing, you understand that the path to healing lies not only in reaching safer ground, but in the solidarity you forged with each step. Tonight, as ash drifts against the cave's mouth and faint echoes of Thera's unrest ripple through the earth, you stand watch with your four-legged companions. Tomorrow, you will lead this small band, onward, trusting instincts, sharing courage, and forging hope from the ashes of a shattered world. Scavenge and fortify your sanctuary. You lie, curled in the cool stone chamber, the goat's warm flank against your side, and the cat's rhythmic purr vibrating through the ledge you rest upon. The survivors, Kairos and his sister the mother, and her baby the elderly woman, and Callias, have settled into small alcoves deep within the cave, each finding a pocket of relative comfort. The ashen drizzle outside has eased, and faint morning light filters through the cave entrance, hinting at a world still coated in gray. But here, within these ancient walls, you breathe a measure of relief. Still, relief alone cannot sustain you indefinitely. Your sanctuary, though sturdy, offers no provisions beyond the cup of water draining from a concealed spring and the minimal rations you bring. You must scavenge the cave's recesses for supplies, fortify this space against collapsing ceilings or renewed ashfall, and plan how to extend its protection to all who huddle within. Gathering your staff and tugging your mask into place, you rise to your feet, the goat shifting to stand beside you. The stone beneath your boots feels intact, but you step carefully, every movement tested by unseen tremors that still rattle these hillsides. You guide the goat and cat toward the cave's farthest chambers, where niches carved into basalt once cradled earthenware vessels. You recall tales that travelers used these niches to store grain, herbs, and simple tools. You tap the basalt wall with the butt of your staff, listening for hollow pockets. Each hollow hint is a potential store of treasure. As you advance, your torchlight flickers across the rough walls, illuminating narrow passages that branch into smaller vaults. You slip through one such archway, the goat padding behind you, and the cat leading the way, tail flicking at the slightest rustle. In the second alcove, your torch catches the rim of a broken clay jar, half buried in ash. You kneel, brushing soot aside to reveal faded, painted patterns. Once it may have stored oil or dried figs. You lift the jar carefully and shake it. No rattle of grains, but a faint smudge of oily residue clings inside. You scoop a small fingerful and press it to your lips, a muted sweetness and warmth. You set the jar aside, a trophy of resilience. A drop of oil may feed the flame when we need light, you murmur to yourself, and return to the main chamber. At the entrance, you meet Callias, who is roused from his watch to gather fallen pine boughs from outside. He nods as you approach, and you hand him the jar. "We might need a wick, but even this residue will help." He tucks the jar into his satchel with solemn gratitude. You turn to the goat, who stands sentinel at the cave's mouth, ears alert. You know the goat has guided you here, and expect its instincts to reveal further hidden stores if you stay close. As you exit again, The goat nudges toward a low ledge just outside the cave. There, half buried under a thin layer of ash, is a weathered leather satchel. You bend to unearth it. Its flap loosens to reveal a small collection of leather pouches filled with dried herbs, sage, thyme, and rosemary, the pungent scents faint but alive. "These will be invaluable," you whisper, imagining how you might brew a bitter tea to soothe weary stomachs or use the herbs' oils to help cleanse wounds. You wrap them in a scrap of cloth and fasten them to your belt, heart swelling with gratitude for the hidden bounty. The goat stands beside you, nostrils flaring as though it senses the value of the find. You pat its side and turn toward the deeper passages once more, but for now, prioritizing fortification means returning to those within. Back inside the main chamber, you find the survivors stirring. Kiros's sister rubs sleep from her eyes, easing the bandage's tension around her ankle. The mother cradles her baby, cooing softly into a damp cloth. The elderly woman sits against a column, rubbing her knuckles as though testing her own resilience. You call everyone together and show them the herbal pouches. These herbs can be used to make poultices: rosemary, for antiseptic sage, for cleansing thyme, for easing coughs when ash irritates the lungs. Their eyes brighten at the promise of natural relief. You instruct Callias to move ash from a section of the chamber's floor, exposing a flattened stone surface. "Here we will arrange these herbs and drying trays," you say, indicating a small alcove. "During the day we can let the warmth from the spring steam help dry any fresh leaves we find outside. At night these pouches will replenish musty air with soothing scents." He nods and sets to work with a borrowed torch, coughing as ash drifts down around him. Meanwhile, you guide Keros and his sister to a lower ledge, where the walls are noticeably thicker. "These walls have been sealed by centuries of lava flow," you explain. "They are less likely to crumble." Together, you and Keros arrange larger stones at the base of a brittle section where a minor crack runs. He holds the stones in place while you wedge smaller rocks between them, shoring up the wall's weakest point. His sister helps, pressing ash-damp clay between the stones to fill gaps. Her ankle protests, but her determination spurs you both onward. The mother volunteers to help Callias gather firewood. You explain that they need small pine sticks and dead branches from outside to keep embers alive, but they must avoid uprooting any green wood. She nods and slips out, with Callias returning minutes later with arms full of brittle boughs. You direct them to lay the wood near the ash barrier, ready for quick ignition when needed. Even a small fire will require vigilant tending to prevent smoke from choking the chamber. Yet the comfort of warmth will be a balm against the ash's raw chill. Next, you turn to basic hygiene. The goat and cat must remain healthy to guide you and detect danger. You kneel to brush ash from the goat's coat, using a strip of cloth to remove clinging dust from its muzzle and hooves. The goat stands patiently, eyes soft, acknowledging your care. The cat demands a gentle stroke behind each ear, purring so loudly it reverberates through the chamber's stone bones. You soak a cloth in cool spring water and gently wipe the cat's fur, dislodging stubborn ash. When you rise, the two animals feel more alert, their fur slightly cleaner, noses twitching as they savor the scent of herbs you placed nearby. Turning back to the survivors, you encourage them to wash their faces and hands at the spring, each looping a thin cloth around the dripping water's edge. You remind them that water is precious. They should rinse gently, avoiding waste. The mother carefully washes her baby's face, and her smile shines as a fragile beacon of hope. You pass your staff to the elderly woman so she can steady herself at the spring's edge, and she grips it tightly, lips curving into a small grin as she tilts her face to let the cool trickle bathe away ash. With hygiene addressed, you shift focus to improving airflow within the cave. You remember that proper ventilation can reduce ash buildup and ease breathing. You lean your staff against the cave's entrance, its pointed tip wedged between two stones to brace a small seam that allows fresh air to enter while keeping ash at bay. The goat stands near the seam, nose pointed inward, inhaling the faint breeze. You gently adjust a ledge's angle so that drifting ash, instead of swirling into the chamber, bypasses the opening. Next, you direct Callias to place crude scratching boards carved from bark on the floor near areas where ash tends to gather. This will allow survivors to pause as they walk, brush ash from their sandals, and keep floors cleaner. He positions them near the entrance and beneath the pine branch lean-to. The cat and goat test these boards by scratching and stepping upon them, coating their paws with minor scrapes. You smile at their approval and nudge the boards toward the survivors. Use these to strip ash from clothing and footwear before entering deeper. With these preparations complete, you gather the survivors once more in the cave's heart. The torches flicker, sending dancing shadows across the basalt walls. You produce the jar of olive oil residue, offering each a small finger dip to moisten their lips and chapped hands. They press the cool oil onto their skin, grateful for its soothing balm. You then distribute the dried herbs, showing how to crush them between palms to release their scents. Each survivor inhales deeply. Sage's sharpness lurks beneath the lingering tang of ash. Rosemary's woodiness mingles with stray pine resin. Thyme's gentle warmth soothes scratchy throats. You speak softly. With these herbs, the small fire, and this fortified cave, we have turned a refuge into a sanctuary. We have supplies, warmth, clean water, and medicine. But we must remain vigilant. Thera's rumblings continue, and ash may return at any moment. Tonight, we will keep watches just as before. You cast a glance at the goat standing sentinel, and the cat perched on a nearby ledge, and add, "Our four-legged friends will guard us as our companions and guides." A murmur of agreement ripples through the survivors, each finding comfort in the promise of mutual care. As midday's pale light struggles to filter through ash, you resolve to venture outside once more to seek fresh water and scout the terrain beyond. But first, you allow yourself a moment to stand amid the survivors, this makeshift community of humans and animals bound by shared hardship and unwavering hope. You draw a slow breath, tasting herb-dusted air, and clutch the goat's neck, whispering, "Together we will endure." The goat's soft bleat and the cat's gentle purr form an echo of your vow. With your sanctuary fortified and spirits bolstered, you step into the dim light at the cave entrance, staff in hand, goat and cat at your side, and survivors pressing close for a final word. You say, "I will return with more supplies." Hold fast to each other, tend the fire, and rest in this refuge. We have come this far by trusting one another and those who walk on four legs. We will continue to do so. You turn to the animals. "Lead me, and I will guide them." With that, you step into the ash-laden light, ready to scavenge, to protect, and to keep the fragile ember of hope alive. Tonight, when the survivors' heads rest against cool stone, they will find warmth in sleep and herbs in their dreams, knowing that their sanctuary stands because they chose unity and action. And tomorrow you will stand vigilant once more, ready to navigate the unsettled world beyond these stone walls, trusting that together, with the goat and the cat, you will forge a path toward renewal. Scour the surrounding slopes, unearth hidden bounties. You step from the cave's cool entrance into the ashen daylight, staff in hand, goat and cat by your side. The survivors remain within the sanctuary, tending the small brazier and brushing ash from their clothes on the makeshift boards. Today's mission is to scour the surrounding slopes for food, water, and materials, anything that can bolster your community's meager stores. The goat sniffs at the air, nostrils flaring as it registers faint traces of wild herbs from higher elevations. The cat pads ahead, sleek and confident, whiskers quivering as it detects subtle movements. You draw a slow breath, inhaling the muted scent of pine and sage, and begin your ascent to the ridge above. Each step tests your balance beneath a thin layer of ash. Loose stones shift, and the ground sometimes gives way to brittle crusts that crack under your weight. You press your staff tip firmly into the slope before moving each foot, ensuring that neither you nor your animal companions stumble into hidden pits. As you climb, the goat leads you toward a cluster of twisted manzanita bushes clinging to the hillside. Their leaves are coated in ash, but you spot bright red berries peeking through the gray. You bend and pluck one, pressing its firm flesh between your fingers. The berry's tangy scent promises nourishment. You pop one into your mouth, savoring a sharp, bittersweet burst that clears most of the ash from your palate. You gather handfuls of berries, stuffing them into a cloth sack. The goat munches on fallen fruit. Its gentle bleats a signal that this plant supplies both food and hope. Further along, the cat's ears perk as it crouches low beside a shallow fissure. You approach and find a trickle of water seeping from a narrow crack in the basalt. You cup your hands and draw in a sip, cool and pure. You dip your cloth into the drip and fill a small flask you carry. Tomorrow, this water reserve might mean the difference between thirst and survival. The goat stands patiently, waiting its turn, and the cat laps at a tiny puddle pooled on a flat stone. Together, you leave the ridge with both berries, and water your satchel heavier with promise. Continuing upward, the slope steepens, and the sparse vegetation gives way to rocky outcroppings. You guide the goat along a narrow ledge where tufts of hardy grasses grow in shallow pockets of soil. Carefully, you uproot a small clump, blades coated in ash, but roots still firm. You recall that these grasses can be soaked and boiled to form a coarse filling meal. You press a handful into your satchel next to the berries. The goat grazes on a tuft of tender shoots, and the cat watches from a higher vantage point, tail flicking, as it remains alert to disturbance. A sudden tremor ripples beneath your boots, brief but unmistakable. You steady yourself, planting your staff, and watch as small stones tumble down the slope. The goat lowers its head and shuffles to a more secure patch of rock, and the cat darts to a crevice for protection. You exhale, heart pounding, and continue with renewed caution. Every step now is measured, guided by the goat's sure instincts and the cat's watchful gaze. Atop a rocky ledge, you pause to survey the landscape. In the distance, you spy a cluster of juniper and scrub pine, similar to the stand sheltering your cave, but at a higher elevation. Between here and there lie terraces, braided with channels where melted snow and hidden springs once flowed. You recall your father's maps. These slopes were rich with wild onions, artichokes, and edible roots. If you can locate any of these, your community's diet can diversify beyond berries and barley cakes. You begin to descend toward a flat terrace dotted with sagebrush and boulders. Each step down is precarious, but the goat navigates with surety, hoof tapping on stone and unspoken guide. The cat follows, weaving between rocks in a silent hunt for small rodents that might lurk beneath. Beneath a flat stone, you uncover the delicate white petals of wild onions peeking through the ash. You pluck a small bulb, clean it gently with your cloth, and sniff its pungent aroma, sharp as vinegar. You know that if brought back to camp, these onions can flavor stews made from barley and wild grasses. Continuing, you find the telltale silvery green leaves of artichokes clinging to the rocky soil. You pull a few young buds, careful not to strip the plant's fibers too deeply. This ensures future growth. You drop them into your pack beside the onions and berries, marveling at the surprising bounty emerging from ashen earth. The goat grazes on tender shoots at the shed's edge, providing pointers to when you move too quickly. If the goat adapts, you know the ground beneath is secure. The cat pauses at a loose boulder. Ears swiveling, its acute senses detect a hidden pocket of moisture beneath the stone. You pry the boulder with your staff, revealing a shallow well of clear water pooled in a natural cavity. You kneel and collect enough to fill your flask once more, and you scoop out another small supply to treat with sage leaves that you gathered. Combining ash-clarified water with antiseptic sage can yield a medicinal tea to ease coughs among your survivors who struggle with ash in their lungs. Your satchel now bulges with foraged fruits, greens, and water. Yet your mission is not complete. You must also gather materials to further fortify your cave. You scan the slope and spot a patch of resilient yucca, leaves their long fibrous blades ideal for weaving or stitching. You carefully cut several leaves with your flint knife, rolling them into a bundle and placing them in a separate corner of your satchel. The goat nuzzles the bundle, nibbling at frayed edges until you guide it back to grazing on grasses. As you prepare to descend, the wind picks up, driving a flurry of ash across the ridge. The goat lowers its head and retreats toward the safety of lower slopes, and the cat crouches low, bracing against the chill. You assess the sky. The ash cloud's underside rumbles faintly, promising renewed ashfall. With urgency, you tuck the yucca roots and grasses securely into your pack and begin the descent. Each footstep triggers miniature avalanches of ash and gravel. You lean heavily on your staff and follow the goat as a sure-footed guide. Finally, you reach the familiar alcove at the ridge's base. You push aside the makeshift barrier stones and ash-packed clay held firm and enter to find the survivors gathered in the main chamber. Their torches flicker faces lit by hope and anticipation. Keros' sister smiles weakly as you approach, and the mother cradles her baby eyes sparkling at your return. The elderly woman hobbles forward, staff in hand, and Callias stands ready to help you unload your bounty. You set your pack down and unveil the spoils: wild onions, artichoke buds, juniper berries, and fresh water. A cheer rises within the chamber, hushed but joyous. The goat steps inside, nuzzling the group as though sharing in their triumph, and the cat weaves between legs, depositing a small bundle of grasses you overlooked. You explain how each item can be used: onions and artichokes roasted near the embers, berries eaten raw for sustenance, and water boiled with sage for fevers or coughs. The goat's gentle bleat punctuates each description, and the cat's soft mew punctuates the final flourish, an unspoken "well done." With practiced care, you move to separate the yucca leaves. You lay them on a flat stone and demonstrate how to strip away the tough fibers, creating long, pliable strands. Keros and his sister join you, clutching the leaves as you guide their fingers to tease apart the layers. The mother and the elderly woman collect smaller strands for weaving into nets, useful for catching small game or carrying provisions. Even the goat seems to watch with rapt attention, flicking its ears as though absorbing your instructions. As midday's light filters into the chamber, you set handfuls of onions and artichokes to roast on the embers. The aroma rises, mingling with the herb-scented air from your sage-infused water pot. You watch the survivors gather around, faces softened by relief and hunger. Keros' sister pieces together the fibers into a crude rope, and the elderly woman weaves nets from smaller strands. The mother cups a bowl of warm sage tea, its steam carrying relief to parched, ash-choked lungs. The goat rests on a flat slab, belly full of herbs and grasses, and the cat curls by the fire's warmth, purring in contentment. You close your eyes briefly, grateful that this day's foraging has yielded both nourishment and materials to further fortify your communal sanctuary. Though the ash-laden world beyond remains uncertain within these stone walls, life pulses with renewed vigor, fed by unity, guided by instincts, and sustained by every small bounty uncovered. Monitor stability and prepare for tomorrow's journey. You awake to the faint hiss of ash settling against the cave entrance, the goat and cat already alert in the dim glow of dawn's filtered light. Last night's bounty: onions, artichokes, juniper berries, and fresh water still rests within your satchel, a small trove of hope. But today's task is critical: ensure this sanctuary remains stable, comfortable, and ready to support your group for one more day. Tomorrow, you plan to lead them farther away from Thera's wrath toward greener foothills. For now, however, you must prepare this cave and its inhabitants for whatever tomorrow brings. You rise, first staff in hand, and step outside to inspect the fortress you've built. Beneath the pines, the ash-laden slope is coated in a thin, gray film, but your barrier of stones and ash clay at the cave's mouth still stands firm against the wind. You tap each stone with your staff, solid and unmoving, then survey the alcove's roof. Last night's tremors rattled loose small pebbles that now rest like fallen soldiers along the edges. Using your staff's tip, you prod the overhanging rock, listening for hollow echoes that signal weakened sections. Each probe is met with a reassuring thud. No large shards remain precariously balanced. You exhale, confident that this space will endure at least one more night. Inside, the survivors stir. Keros stretches, rubbing his ankle, now bandaged but less swollen. His sister yawns, blinking away residual sleep and ash. The mother cradles her baby, humming a lullaby. The elderly woman traces the carved niches with her finger, recalling ancient footsteps. You greet each with a silent nod before addressing them collectively. Today, we reinforce our sanctuary and ready ourselves for tomorrow's departure. You announce voice, gentle yet resolute. They nod in response, trust shining in their eyes. Your first task is to distribute yesterday's foraged goods. You set a shallow basin on a flat rock where sunlight filters faintly through the entrance. You dip a small cloth in the spring's clear water and gently rinse the onions, revealing their pale bulbs beneath a veil of ash. You pass the cleaned onions to the mother, who places them over the embers to roast. Their aroma promises warmth and nourishment. You instruct her daughter to help peel and slice each bulb, then toss the slices into a small clay dish if the mother moves too slowly. You guide her hands, ensuring each slice is even. The girl's eyes light up at the novelty of slicing onions, and a connection sparks as she helps her mother prepare food for the group. While the onions roast, you direct Keros and his sister to tend the nets woven from yucca fibers. You watch as he checks each knot, making sure no strand is frayed. She inspects the smaller nets designed to trap wild herbs and small game. You ask them to braid extra strands into a thick cord. These cords will prove invaluable when you navigate tomorrow's steep slopes or need to secure supplies. They set to work teaching each other as they go, laughter bubbling beneath anxious eyes, as though forging a bond that transcends hardship. Next, you turn your attention to the cave's sleeping areas. The survivors have cobbled together blankets and pine needle mattresses, but you recognize the need to reshuffle their positions to avoid bottlenecks if tremors strike. You kneel and reposition each person, the mother and baby, nearest to the spring where fresh water flows. The elderly woman beside a sturdy column, her staff within reach. Keros and his sister huddled on a smooth ledge free from loose rocks that could shift, and Callias on a flat stone near the entrance, ready to brace for falling ash or stone. The goat settles on a broad slab that overlooks the chamber, and the cat curls in a shaded nook, tail twitching as though guarding your rearranged arrangement. Each placement feels deliberate, a careful stitch in the patchwork of safety you weave. With sleeping quarters set, you address the cave's ventilation. Yesterday's adjustments improved airflow, but you know wind can shift ash in sneaky currents, forcing it deeper into the cave. You return to the entrance, and using your staff, tilt the barrier stone slightly to allow a gentle draft while still blocking most ash. You install one last clamp of ash clay over a small seam to prevent the worst gusts from funneling through. The goat sniffs each stone hooves, nudging them as if approving your handiwork, while the cat circles the barrier, testing the seams with a cautious paw. Satisfied, you give a curt nod and step back inside. Now you focus on disease prevention. Last night's smoky sage tea soothed scratchy lungs, but ash-laden days demand vigilance against respiratory infection. You gather dried sage thyme and rosemary from your satchel and demonstrate how to crush them into a coarse powder. You ask each survivor to select a few leaves and place them in small cloth sachets. These sachets can be tucked into clothing or hung in alcoves to purify the air. Keros holds a sachet to his sister's mask, allowing her each breath to pass through the herb-laced cloth. The mother ties a sachet to her baby's blanket, ensuring her child inhales gentler air. The elderly woman places a sachet near her pillow, and Callias perches one near the goat's resting spot, ensuring even the animal breathes aromatic comfort. The cat cheek, brushing a sachet, seems to validate your plan with a satisfied purr. As mid-morning approaches, you turn your attention to the cave's structural supports. Beneath a flickering torch, you inspect the alcove's far wall where two large boulders cast deep shadows. During your initial forays, you noticed faint cracks that now seem more pronounced. You kneel to brush ash from the fissure, revealing a hairline fracture running its length. You place a finger over the crack. It feels cool and dry. No water indicates lack of imminent collapse, but tremors could widen it. You decide to place wooden braces posts cut from pine branches between that wall and a sturdy overhead ledge. You select two straight branches from Callias's firewood pile, carving notches at each end with your flint knife. Leaning one post into the notch, you wedge the other end under the ledge, raising the branch until it fits snugly. The second post you place parallel, forming a crude support system. The goat stands beside you, nose twitching as if approving that you've added an extra layer of protection. The cat leaps onto the overhead ledge, inspecting your work, then settles near the brace as though endorsing your handiwork. With structural reinforcements in place, you gather everyone for a moment of reflection. This cave shields us, but it is not invincible, you say, voice echoing against the stone. With each tremor, we must reassess. Tonight, keep watch in rotation, 2 hours on 6 hours off rest, eat well, and be ready to move again. You assign Callias the first watch, Keros the second, and the elderly woman the third, ensuring the mother and her baby rest, while the goat and cat stand guard. They nod, each understanding their role in this fragile dance between safety and danger. Now you allow yourself a moment to rest. The goat lies at your feet, and you stroke its coarse coat, gratitude swelling in your chest. You've guided us well, you murmur, meeting its gentle eye. The cat twines around your ankles, purring as though acknowledging the unity you forged. You lean against a cool stone pillar, closing your eyes as you inhale the tang of crushed herbs and smoky pine. Each breath you draw is a reminder you and your companions have purpose here to survive, to protect, and to carry hope forward. As the goat and cat settle into companionable stillness, you reflect on what tomorrow holds: a descent through the valley's winding paths, a trek across ash-laden slopes, and the search for greener ground. But, for now, your sanctuary stands fortified, every nook and cranny improved by your careful hands. The survivors sleep more soundly, slumbering not in some false security, but within a shared fortress built on trust and mutual care. You tighten your grip on the staff and rise, preparing to settle into a brief rest yourself. Tonight, when your watch begins, you will stand at the cave's mouth, ready to sound an alarm at the first tremor or return of ash. But, for these few precious hours, you allow sleep to claim you, anchored by the goat's steady breathing and the cat's soothing purr. And as you drift into slumber beneath the cave's protective roof, you carry within you the promise that when dawn breaks and the ash settles again, you and your band, human and animal, will take your next steps toward a future reclaimed from the ashes. Dawn's exodus journey to the green foothills. You wake before first light, the cave's shadows long and still around you. The goat stands sentinel near the entrance, nostrils flaring at the chill dawn air, while the cat stretches and pads silently to your side. Beneath the flickering torchlight, the survivors Keros and his sister, the mother, cradling her baby, the elderly woman stir from their slumber on the stone benches. You tighten your cloth mask, aware that ash may still drift in, and draw your staff close, preparing your heart and mind for today's journey, a final push toward greener foothills beyond Thera's wrath. One by one you rouse the survivors. Today we leave this sanctuary, you whisper voice, gentle but resolute. We move as one toward the ridge of cypress and juniper we saw from above. The mother presses her baby close. The elderly woman grips her staff, nodding with determined acceptance. Keros rubs his sister's shoulders, encouraging her to rise despite her tender ankle. Callias stands by to help anyone who stumbles, while the goat and cat ease into place at the cave's mouth, eager to guide your steps once more. You step outside first, the goat and cat following. The valley floor lies cloaked in pale ash, a near-silent expanse, except for the faint murmur of distant springs. The sun, filtered through endless gray, bathes the world in an eerie sepia light. You tap your staff on the ash-covered ground firm, reassuring beneath your weight. The goat's hooves click a gentle rhythm as it steps forward, leading the way while the cat curls low to examine every crevice. You turn to invite the others onward. The survivors exit in unbroken formation, Keros supporting his sister, the mother balancing her baby, the elderly woman moving slowly supported by her staff and Callias's steady arm. You position the goat at the front and the cat just ahead of the group, trusting their instincts to find the path. Their presence brings a soft reassurance. In their calm vigilance you sense that you are not alone in this perilous world. Descending from the cave, you guide the group toward the broad terrace that leads to the valley floor. The goat steps confidently onto what appears to be a solid track, its hooves disturbing only a fine dusting of ash. You follow in its wake, each footfall careful beneath the shallow ash stones, sometimes shift, revealing hidden pitfalls where molten streams might still lie. The cat darts ahead, nose to the ground, then darts back to ensure the path is safe. Every so often it pauses to peer into a fissure, and you wait until its tail flick reassures you that no steam vent swells beneath. Halfway down, a faint tremor shudders through the slope, rattling loose stones. The goat's ears twitch, and it halts, hooves poised for balance. You grip your staff hard, hammering, and wait. The quake subsides as quickly as it came. You breathe a sigh of relief and glance at the survivors. They press close, drawing strength from each other. You whisper, "Stay close, stay steady," and guide them onward. At the valley floor, the group reaches a shallow trench where clear water still bubbles, a remnant of yesterday's spring. You kneel to refill your flask and cupped cloths, then pass them to the survivors. Each breath tastes of crisp moisture, a gift in the desolate ash plain. The goat drinks eagerly, nuzzling the cat aside when necessary, while the cat laps gingerly from a small pool you tilt your fingers to create. You fill another flask for the return trip, knowing that this water may be the difference between survival and desperation. Leaving the water trench behind, the goat leads you across a narrow stone bridge where steam still rises from cracks. You step cautiously, each slab tested by your staff, then press on toward a distant stand of charred pine and juniper. A low ridge lifts the horizon, its crest dotted with silhouettes of skeletal trees you glimpsed from the ridgeline. If you can crest that ridge, the land beyond promises greener hillsides, hidden springs, and perhaps other survivors to share resources and stories. The goat climbs the gentle slope, with surety, each hooffall steady. The cat probes ahead, tail high, sniffing for hidden caches of edible roots or tender shoots. You pass Keros and his sister, slices of roasted onion for sustenance. The mother carefully folds a piece into her baby's mouth, soothing it with a soft hum. The elderly woman chews slowly, savoring each morsel as though tasting life itself. You press a warm onion slice to Keros's lips, encouraging him to eat despite his fatigue. He nods, swallowing gratefully. As you near the ridge's base, the slope steepens. You steady your staff against the incline and guide each survivor to follow the goat's lead. Step where it steps, you instruct quietly. The goat ascends, nose to the breeze, selecting shallow terraces carved by long-gone shepherds. You place your foot precisely where the goat's hoof rests, trusting that its instinct has guided you safely. Keros's sister follows gingerly, planting her foot. His arm around her waist offers stability. The mother ascends, next baby cradled in one arm, the other gripping your staff. The elderly woman moves slowly, pausing at each step to ensure sure footing, while Callias remains vigilant behind, ready to catch any stumble. Nearing the ridge's crest, you glimpse farther a rolling landscape of soft green hills, streaked with silver-blue rivulets where rivers once ran. The goat halts at a narrow, rocky outcrop, turning to face you, as though requesting confirmation. You nod, heart-swelling at the promise of renewal, and breathe in the cooler, moisture-laced air. Beyond, a stand of living cypress and young pines crowns the ridge, their branches trembling in the light breeze, a stark contrast to the charred, ash-laden slopes below. Sheltering beneath the ridge's edge, you usher everyone onward. The descent is gentler. The goat steps between shallow gullies where ferns peek through the ash, and the cat emerges into a patch of moss that clings to the underrock. You help Keros's sister down by dropping your staff at her side, and he steadies her as you guide the rest. The elderly woman moves with fatigue etched on her brow, but she steadies herself against a living pine trunk, finding comfort in its rough bark and the faint scent of green. Atop the ridge's gentle plateau, you gather the survivors and take in the panorama, rolling hills of verdant grass dotted with wildflowers, unfazed by the ash-laden winds. You spot a small cluster of stone-built cottages at a distance, perhaps abandoned, perhaps still inhabited, alongside the faint outline of a far-off grove. The goat sniffs the air and bleats softly, as if greeting a long-lost home. The cat purrs, curling its tail around your ankle, content with the promise of grass beneath its paws. You guide the group toward a shallow spring, bubbling from beneath a large boulder. The mother kneels to fill her flask and dampen her child's cloth, then passes it to Keros to share with his sister. The elderly woman drinks slowly, tears glinting in her eyes at each cool sip. You lift your staff and march each survivor toward a small copse of pine and juniper that offers shelter from lingering ashfall. As they settle on soft, grassy ground, you notice tufts of wild barley and patches of edible thistle, reachable within a few strides, proof that sustenance endures even after upheaval. The goat grazes on tender shoots of grass, its bleat of contentment echoing across the meadow. The cat perches on a sun-warmed rock, batting at a stray leaf, as though conducting an orchestra of renewal. You spread a cloth and lay out small portions of roasted onions, artichoke halves, and handfuls of juniper berries. The survivors gather around, savoring each bite, a taste of life beyond ash. Keros' sister helps her brother nibble a juniper berry, its tartness drawing a small smile on his weary face. The mother shares her baby's meal prime among them, a soft piece of roasted onion she gently feeds by hand. You watch the survivors as they eat relief, softening lines of worry, the faint laughter of Keros attempting to describe the onion's bite and the baby's gurgling delight. The elderly woman murmurs a prayer of thanks under her breath, her staff planted firmly beside her. You place a final onion slice before the goat, which munches gratefully, eyes half closed in satisfaction. As the survivors rest beneath the ridge's gentle sun, you take a moment to reflect. The journey from cave to cliff top, from ash to grass, has tested every fiber of your being, but you led them through each peril by trusting instincts, forging unity, and honoring every breath. Now, as you sit on a soft mound of moss goat at your side and cat curled nearby, you recognize that this short chapter of refuge and survival has forged a bond unbroken by ash and upheaval. Tomorrow, you will guide them farther toward the distant cottages where you might find more water seeds or fellow survivors to share skills. But for now, you allow yourself to bask in the promise of renewal. Each breath of green-scented air, each taste of fresh water, and each step away from the shadows of Thera's wrath. Tonight, you will rest with your family of two-legged and four-legged companions, knowing that in unity and shared purpose you found hope amid the ashes and will continue to carry it forward until the world once again blooms in gentle peace. And now, as the sun dips beneath gentle hills and the shadows lengthen, let us rest here together beneath these forgiving pines. You have tasted fresh water from hidden springs, felt soft grass beneath your feet, and watched your children nibble sweet berries that once clung to scorched earth. The goat lies beside you, breathing steady and calm its presence, a reminder that nature's heart still beats even when the world trembles. The cat curls in your lap, purring like a lullaby woven from resilience and quiet wonder. Tonight, let sleep wash over you like pure rain, cleansing each weary bone. Let your skin feel warmth, no longer pricked by ash, but soothed by cool breezes rustling through juniper. Close your eyes and imagine distant valleys, where earth runs green and rivers sing, where laughter once brimmed through sunlit villages. Know that you carried your family here through tremors, through ash, through doubt, guided by instincts as old as the land itself. May your dreams be gentle. Imagine the olive trees you knew in another life, branches heavy with blossoms. Picture fields of barley swaying beneath a blameless sky. Hear the soft bleat of the goat calling you back to morning's promise. Let these visions drift through your mind like falling petals, light and unburdened. And when you wake at dawn, breathe deep, for the air will taste of pine and possibility. Tomorrow you will set out again, following hidden paths, listening for bird calls, feeling each blade of grass beneath your sandal. You will share smiles with neighbors you have yet to meet, and perhaps taste honey from combs unspoiled by ash. Each step will stitch together a new tapestry of life, woven from courage, care, and the gentle guidance of your steadfast companions. Rest now, dear traveler, for you have earned these moments of peace. May your dreams be kind, May your breathing be easy, and may tomorrow's sun greet you with a world more bright than you dare imagine. Good night and sleep well until dawn's soft light returns.